Good morning. Good morning. I hope everyone is rested after yesterday's commission meeting. Thank you so much for being here. Madam Clerk, are we on? 1 second.
Recording in progress.
Good morning. Thank you for being at our first capital workshops meeting as we prepare for the budget for 2025-2026. I'd first off like to start off by apologizing once again, like I did yesterday, to the residents and to the business community. We are starting this meeting 7 minutes late. I know that everybody has places to be and that it is, again, important for us to be as punctual as possible and be respectful of people's time. But I want to start off by saying thank you to our employees, first and foremost. Thank you for your hard work over the last few months in preparation for budget season. Thank you for what's forthcoming, your efforts to deliver, obviously, a balanced budget, but a budget that, again, tries to meet as many needs here in the city of Coral Gables. And I'd like to start off by welcoming our finance director, who's going to be leading the charge today in our capital workshop. But before we do that, I also want to put on the record that I may have to step out around 10:15 because I have a doctor's appointment. I actually have an MRI that I have to take care of. That's been something that I've been meaning to do for a long time, and I'm trying to avoid surgery on the issue. So God willing, my MRI is a positive one, but I have a feeling it's not going to be very positive by the pain that I'm feeling today. So the vice mayor will be taking over the meeting if I have to step out if we're not done by 10:15. So, Madam Finance Director, Assistant Finance Director, thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Paula Rodriguez, Assistant Finance Director for Management, Budget, and Compliance. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. First of all, I always like to thank all of our staff. So everything that we do in the budget process is not just myself or my staff. It is a collaboration amongst all of the department directors, their staff, input from the commission, input from the community, our direction from our city manager and our DCM and ACM. And so thank you, everybody, for all of your efforts. I will try to make today go as quickly as possible, but spend the time to be mindful and thoughtful about how we allocate our funding today. So as you all know, we start off the budget process in February. In March, departments submit to us their requests for capital funding. And so each year we update a 5-year capital improvement plan. And what we're doing today is we are reviewing the recommended funding for fiscal year 26 based on the available funding that we have for our capital projects plan and establishing our 5-year plan, which will, this will morph over the next couple of months. What we discussed today will be included in our July 1 budget estimate that you will receive. And then we will be setting a millage, a tentative millage on July 6th. And so today's discussion is very important. It'll determine what we can fund in our capital improvement plan for fiscal year 26.
May I ask you just for a brief statement on in regards to issues? I want to set the real form so people in the community understand where we are financially. Again, there's a lot of projects we want to fund. There's a lot of needs. It's a lot of needs. Where are we in regards to our ability to fund projects as a result of certain things that are being forecasted and decisions that we've made?
So, Mayor, to that point, and I'm glad that you brought it up because I do have some notes here of what I was going to discuss. So the funding that you're going to see here today is based on the property value estimates that we received on June 1. And so our June 1 property values came in with an increase of about 5.4%, which seems significant. And in any given year, that would be a good increase. But for the last couple of years, we've seen increases of 10 and 12%, and we've been able to fund a significant amount more. So that 5.4% increase in property values generates an additional approximately $7 million based on the current millage of 5.559. So we are estimating everything here today consistent on the current millage. You will see that, so one of our goals with capital has been to always try to fund as much capital with recurring dollars. We have established matrices with our matrices that fund the renewal and replacement of our equipment. And over the years, we've been able to increase the amount of recurring dollars that we bring into our capital plan. This year, however, you will see that there is a reduction in recurring revenues. We are still going to do well with funding. We have one-time items because we have also benefited from an increase in interest revenue. But that is only one time. We can't consider interest revenue to consistently go up. We know that the economy fluctuates and that we will likely see some drops in interest revenue in the coming years. So to the mayor's point, where previously we were able to bring in upwards of $18 to $20 million of recurring funding, you will see here that this year we are only bringing in $12.9 million of recurring funding. And so why is that? Because we have to put that recurring funding into our operating budget. So recurring funding will first go towards the recurring expenses in our operating budget, which include increases to salaries for COLAs, merits, regular increases. We are expecting a significant increase in health next year that will be presented to you on the July 2nd meeting. And so first we give as much, any necessary recurring revenue to the operating budget, and then we bring it into capital.
So if I may, so I just want to put this on the record again. I want to be very, very clear because I will be sending this to the residents. Number one, did I ask you to make that statement that you just made right now? Increases. A COLA, $2 million a year, correct?
Yes.
For the next 10 years,
Yes, we're talking about the
correct?
That is the pension COLA,
Yes.
which impacted the pension liability by $1.8 million.
Yes, which you have to pay a year, correct?
Right, but is being paid for, it's being paid for with a reduction of the extra payment. So it's not recurring revenue.
But we're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yes,
We're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
yes.
Which I'm in opposition of reducing our contribution payment. I want to be very, very clear, because at the end of the day, we're just fooling ourselves. We're fooling ourselves. So for me, I don't know who made the decision to reduce our contribution amount. Mr. Manager, did we make that decision already? Did someone here make the decision?
We're working on that, but our contribution amount has been reduced by 1.8 million.
Okay, I would not do that.
So it was discussed when the item passed. I was very clear that we will not have an additional $1.875 million to fund to keep the extra payment where it needed to go. We would not have that revenue. And it was discussed that the only way that we were going to be able to pay it was by reducing the extra payment. And unfortunately, the budget will show you that we do not have an additional $1.875 million to then bring the extra payment to the same level it was last year.
I want you to say it as clear as you said it that day, when you said you were not in favor of the COLA.
I was not.
Okay. I want you to be clear, because people are confused, or they forget. We are robbing Peter to pay Paul. Yes or no?
We are taking it from otherwise, yes, funds that we need to, yes. I guess if that saying is fine, we are robbing Peter to pay Paul,
Okay,
if that's
all
the way
right.
you want to
And
put
think who
it.
you
This
named,
is
Peter,
what
yes.
happens.
Not this Peter, but
This is what happens when you make fiscal decisions that are reckless. You pay for them at the workshop.
agreed.
Okay? There's less money. Now, number one. Number two, budget season has not finished at the state. There are many pending issues that could potentially affect our budget, like the homestead exemption increase. You and I talked about that. It could be an additional $4 to $5 million hit if they do what they want to do to the city of Coral Gables. Is that correct?
Yes, we don't believe it'll happen for this year.
Oh, no.
But we
Again,
believe it
it's not
probably will
done.
next year.
It's not done, correct? So we
That is
don't know.
correct, yes.
If it was closed today, I would tell you, hey, it's not going to happen. It's going to happen potentially next year, but it could happen.
Right.
Third, union contracts. It's going to be an additional $4 to $5 million cost a year on the city, correct? Is that the number?
So when we did it 2 years ago, we had said that we were removing about $4 million from recurring capital in order to fund the contracts back then, yes.
Okay. So I want to make sure that everybody's aware. And like I said very clearly, we're going to have reduced revenue. Winter's coming.
Sure.
And we went from having 10 or 11%, 12% in property value increases a year to now 5%. So that means that there's less money coming in.
And I would
And
be
hold on, wait, before we do that.
I think we're going to say the same thing.
Before,
Okay.
I know you're gonna say, but before we get into that, what have we talked about next year? What is the forecast for next year? Is it better than this year, or is it not as good? Tell me.
So all of the conversations that I have had with the commission and with the city manager has been that we have to be very mindful in what we build into the recurring budget this year, because I do believe that in fiscal year '27, we will have a tighter year. Many of the things that we are balancing, particularly in capital this year, are coming from interest income that we have seen very healthy over the last couple of years. The residual of the property values that we've seen increase over the last couple of years. I believe that property values will go down the increase of property values will go down even further. And it would be remiss of me not to mention that the solid waste fee reduction last year also significantly impacted our ability to fund recurring items, because that was recurring money that we had coming into the budget. So next year will be a more
I just want to add
difficult
one
year.
last point. All right, the last point. I voted against the additional employees. How many employees did we add last year?
25, maybe?
Okay, 25. Which has a massive increase in expenditure in regards to what we're going to be having to be responsible. And it's not just the 25 employees, it's also the pension obligations that are required with those 25 employees. Okay, I'm very happy you said something, and that was one of the items that I was going to cover. Interest income, because as I read, and I hope that everyone read what you've been providing, it is unsustainable. Again, I'm going to try to do this again, just like the COLA. It is unsustainable to say that we're going to do all these projects, do all these things, and then say that we're going to live off the interest income.
Right.
It comes to an end. Property values went down this year at 50% in regards to what we got the year before, if not more. They're going to go down again. You're only going to make the noose around your neck tighter and have to make some tough decisions next year. In the same time, if you're not thoughtful on how we do this year. Please, for the record, how many pet projects do I have a year that I say to you, this is something that's important to me?
Currently 0.
Last year was 1, and I gave it up, which was the park. The park monies, I think it was $250,000, and I gave it up to fund another project. So my point is, we shouldn't make this about personal things that we think are important. It should be what needs to get done here in the city to get the city to the next turn. So we're in a tough situation. We have to stop saying that we're not. We have to be very careful, very methodical, and curate the budget in a way that does not put more stress on the budget, right? Because you're going to have to cut. And if you don't cut employees, you're going to have to cut services because there's nowhere else to cut. And you continue to cut capital projects, eventually you're not going to have a capital budget. That's what's going to end up happening. So, Commissioner Lara, you wanted to say something. I
I
apologize.
just wanted a question to finance. How much on an annualized basis was the solid waste reduction fee from last year?
$3.6 million.
So that goes to the reason why it's an important question, and your statement's important, is because the work that Commissioner Fernandez is going to lead with the help of the commission is critically important. This is the most important thing that we could possibly tackle this year outside of City Hall and a few other projects, but this is important because this is a reoccurring cost that's only going up, the garbage, through pass-throughs through Miami-Dade County, because we don't have a place to throw away our garbage. We'd have to depend on somebody else, so we're at their mercy. So this is a critical opportunity to address something that is going to hopefully positively affect our budget. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to say that our millage rate of 5.59% is the lowest millage rate for a full-service city other than Key Biscayne. So our millage rate is low. When we do things like waste fee reductions of 3.6 million, COLAs of 2 million, that's 5.6 million. All those are reductions in reoccurring revenue. So where can we get that money? We also have all the inflationary needs that we have to deal with. So if we're looking at removing expenses, we need to very, very carefully look at what that's going to do to our budget. We either reduce services or reduce capital CIP projects, capital improvement projects. So we're working very, very lean. Again, we are, except for Key Biscayne, we are the lowest millage rate of a full-service city. So we're at the point right now that if one project needs to come on, another project needs to come off. And just those two items alone were $5.6 million on this budget.
Madam Vice Mayor?
Just quickly, and I know your time is limited. I just want to remind folks that what happened in the dot-com era, where people counted on interest income or revenues from investments, is exactly how we ended up with such a deficit in, the pension plans itself. Waste fees are going to have to go up because we can't continue to sustain what it is. We are paying a tremendous amount for tipping fees, and there is an easy way to bring it down if we recycle the green waste. You can get it down at least $10 a ton. And unless we create a system with greater efficiencies, and there's many ways to slice that bread to get it done and still deliver the same high-quality services that we do, there's no choice. I know from a few years back, and I had said it on the commission then, that people in the Northeast, because they're so limited, I'm talking about the Northeast United States, are paying like $75, $85 a ton back then. And I was talking to our state legislators about the fact that we need to do something more sustainable. Throwing away a good product that can be reused and sold is shameful. So we need to do it smarter and better. So, in order to encourage folks to adopt a better system, we will have to, there's a price tag on it, okay? That's it. I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Through the mayor, if I may.
Commissioner, I wanted to say something.
Oh, excuse me.
And thank you. Paula, how much are we funded right now in the pension?
So the pension right now is funded at 74.5%.
So may I make a request for you?
Sure.
Since the commissioner asked that question, now I want to make sure we educate people. What were we funded before we approved the COLA for $20 million over the next 10 years?
So that number, I believe it would have been around 77%. I can tell you in a second.
So let me put this on the record. It's a good opportunity, and I'm happy that the Commissioner Castro made that question. So not only does it cost the city almost $2 million a year, but we also cost the employees almost 4% of their pension. And by the way, you've seen how topsy-turvy the stock market is for those people that are invested in it. That didn't help out. So this is the time, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're the finance professionals, just like you told us not to do that. You're the finance professionals. Would you like right now to see us giving more money to the unfunded liability like we were before during these topsy-turvy times? Yes or no?
At the end of the day, I do want the pension to be funded higher than 85%, 90% before we stop anything more, right? So yes, I would love it, but I understand that there are needs throughout the city that also are high priority, so.
Madam Finance Director, there are needs.
Yes.
But in my opinion, the reason why I voted no on that is because that is not a need that trumps anything else here. You, by making that decision and giving a $2 million COLA a year to a certain class of employees, that does not include current employees. Current employees are not included in that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You hurt the current employees because you jeopardize their retirement in a very unstable economic moment in this country's history, where you're seeing massive swings up and down of the stock market and that are causing potentially damage to their retirement. So we have to be very thoughtful, be very methodical. That's why when I started here, we started with a $500,000 yearly investment increase in the 13th check for the unfunded liability, and we went all the way up to over $9 million. The point was, I don't want to use that money. That money we could use to do great projects here in the city. But the reason why we did it was to shore up the retirement of the employees that we respect and appreciate. When I walked in here, that commission wasn't responsible for a 51% unfunded liability. That happened before we got here, but we assumed the responsibility to address that issue. That is the correct thing to do as fiduciaries and responsible people. What we did here last year was irresponsible, and was not in the best interest of the city.
Through the mayor.
So we can skin it any way you want, but just the fact that it proves that last year it was funded to 77%.
So no, it was at 75.2%. We came down to 74%, but had we not funded the COLA and all the other changes, it would have been now 77.2. So I want to be clear.
It would have been higher.
Yes,
We're going in
had
the
we
wrong-
not done the things
Can I
that
say-
affected the
I
pension.
want the finance director.
Yes.
So we're going in the wrong direction, not in the right direction.
This year, we are going in the wrong direction.
And by the way, and the $2 million a year, the $2 million COLA doesn't help the cause, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Through the mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just want to go ahead and I completely respect your opinion. I obviously differ in a very large way, but we need to take care of our employees, especially those employees that were asking for that COLA. It was a small settlement that we had not given to them every time they've been coming up here. When I say let's take care of our employees, I'm talking about retention. And what message are we sending other employees saying, hey, you know, when you leave the city and you have no way to pay your rent and you are retired, that's on you. When you have risked your whole life for this city and for us, but hey, it's more important to fund the pension. It's 1.8 million less of an extra payment that we are paying to the pension, so we cannot take care of you when you took care of us. I'm sorry. That sends a very, very bad message just because you're trying to get to 2% more of the pension. This makes a great life difference into every employee that sacrificed their lives for us. And if you cannot keep that in your heart, or you cannot keep that in your mind, that it is important to support the employees of the city, that's just very different strategies that we're both taking. At the end of the day, retention is important. Because that same money, that 2% that you think we're missing, we're gonna be missing in turnover. We're gonna be missing in people that keep on leaving because we don't value them, because we don't appreciate them. And how much do you think it costs to onboard an employee, to go ahead and train them, and for them to get to the quality of the same employee that we lost because we couldn't retain? Those are things to keep in mind. Besides the, hey, we could have been at 77% this year. Oh, but we're at 75.8 because we took out 1.8 million a year from an extra payment to the pension. There is priorities, and people are priorities. I'm sorry to tell you, Mr. Mayor. So you could keep on and keep on, but this is the real facts. This is life. This is not just a math journal.
So I'm gonna keep on to keep on, as the commissioner said.
Through the mayor.
Excuse me 1 second. First and foremost, is our HR director here? She's not. Do you know how many employees we lost last year?
I don't have that information.
We had some of the largest losses of employees last year when we gave them the largest pension increases, when we gave them a COLA, past employees, and when we gave them work from home. Okay? So, again, you know why? Because we lack leadership, and it starts from the top. And I know that you know, Commissioner Castro wants to be friends with everybody and have the employees, and I appreciate that. I treat the employees with immense amount of respect. But I have a fiduciary responsibility to the city, to the residents, and to the employees. And the issue that we have here at hand is a clear one, is that we cannot forget how we got to the point where we're at today. And that is by making reckless decisions like the ones that were made here. Like hiring a manager without reviewing a resume, just seeing that you know him on LinkedIn. By giving yourself a raise, by giving yourself a car allowance, by doing reckless things like giving a $2 million COLA, which you shouldn't have given, okay? So I'm not gonna forget history because you know what happened? And I'm gonna educate my commissioner to the right of mine because he seems to have a short memory.
Again,
12 years ago, when we stepped onto this commission floor, we had to make very tough decisions, correct? Right or wrong?
Yes.
Okay? We had to tighten our belt to ensure, so when you say respecting the employees, I could have taken that money and used that money for something else. That was a capital improvement project, but we decided to pay down debt and to shore up the pensions of our employees. That's caring for your employees. Not having the second worst funded pension for a city in Miami, in the state of Florida, correct? At that point, we're the second worst funded pension.
I believe that's correct.
That's correct.
We've also been able to, at that time, I believe that our employees were making significant contributions to the pension.
And we also reduced that
And
too.
we've been able to significantly reduce the
So
employees'
if
contribution.
you could also educate my colleague to the right who says that I don't care about employees, how much were general employees paying out of their share at that point? And I reduced it and I brought it to the commission.
Some upwards of 22%.
And what are they at now?
Well, now we did it to
10%.
10%.
So not only have we shorted the pensions, but we've also put more money in their pocket the right way, not by incurring debt. So you can skin it any way you want, but the bottom line is this. I don't need an education on how to run a business. Trust me, I've been doing this for a long time. And I know how to put my employees first. I know how to treat my employees. But at the end of the day, I won't jeopardize the city and I won't jeopardize its residents. Madam Vice Mayor.
One more point on that, and during our trips to Tallahassee, one of the critical points that they found and they questioned us about was the rate at which we were contributing extra money to the pension plan. It showed that we were doing responsible budgeting moving forward, and it did help us get the appropriations that we did. They looked very carefully at our budgets. One of the first things that was brought up when I would sit down with the representatives was the fact that, we gave ourselves salary increases. The fact that we didn't save money and tighten our belts in other areas where we should have been tightening our belts. So I could go on for a while on that, but I don't want to delay your presentation any further. I know somebody has an MRI that he must go for.
Through the mayor.
Mr. Manager.
Just quickly, Mayor, looking at the pension plan, our prior minimum contribution was 21 million, approximately 21 million. Our current contribution has to be now approximately over 25 million, which means that we're contributing to the pension plan with the extra payment over $30 million. That should be a $5 million cost, not a $30 million cost. So if we can reduce that by X number of years, we would have an addition, if we had been funded 100%, we'd have an additional $25 million right now. That's a substantial problem, substantial issue that the faster I believe that we take care of that, the better we do, not only for the pension plan, but for our city and for our residents. So but those extra payments have put us in a position right now that whatever, and our lowest, and the fact we have the lowest millage of any full-service city, we are very, very tight right now. If we can resolve our pension plan issue in 6 years, is better than resolving it in 10 years, and the minimum payment would be a 20-year return on that, and that's why we have that extra payment. So now, if we look at 21 million and change to 25 million and change, that's an extra $4 million that we have to come up with there if we want to have a similar extra payment. So
The goal, Mr. Manager, is simple. The goal is we're paying an additional $25 million a year to the pension that we wouldn't have to pay if we were funded. $25 million. If we get to the goal, you can remove that $25 million. When you're talking about $1.8 million, $2 million is nothing compared to $25 million of reoccurring revenue, what you could do with it. It just requires control and discipline like we had. So I don't care how you skin it and you want to sell it, that I don't care about employees. I do care about employees. Trust me, I reduced their payment. I did that. We raised from $500,000 to over $9 million a year, the additional payment. So at the end of the day, those are major belt tightening and also discipline to ensure that the city's taken care of and the employees are taken care of. But you can't be short-sighted and say, oh, I'm going to give them the money now, and then whatever, we go backwards in the pension, it'll be somebody else's responsibility. But do something for the next 5 years, you could have an extra $25 million a year to do what you want to do with that. If it's giving employees bonuses, if it's hiring new people, if it's capital projects, whatever that may be, it's up to that commission when that happens. Just takes 6 more years of disciplined behavior, and now we're heading in the wrong direction.
Through the mayor.
Yes.
Okay, so you're completely right. I give you credit for saying, yes, we have lost a lot of employees. And then he asks himself, well, how are we losing employees if you're acting recklessly and giving this much COLAs and giving what he calls too rich for his blood union contracts? Well, let me go ahead and educate you a little bit. the union contracts that we gave, we are trying to catch up, okay? We're still not at the competitiveness of other surrounding municipalities. And just so that you know, we're gonna continue to lose employees, especially you having the majority here, not wanting to pay them what at least neighboring municipalities are paying them. So yes, it's not only morale, it's compensation. People go to work to get paid. And if they're getting paid elsewhere, we're gonna continue to lose them. A little education for you.
Okay, so let me correct you for a fact. We have 2 years left in the contracts, both in police and fire. I voted in favor of the police because the police were underpaid. I voted against the fire because even in the words of the staff who were there, it was way too rich. And Commissioner Castro was the one that wanted to pay them even more than what was being offered. Just a quick education. How many firefighters are we short right now, Madam Director? Firefighters. 7.
Right, so there's 7 vacancies, but they're in the process of recruiting them, and those are for Firehouse 4.
So Chief, how many people apply for those positions? We want to have this discussion here. How many people apply for those 7 positions? Okay, so I don't think we have a problem. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Thank you for that, Commissioner.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Staff was sometimes talking off the microphone, so if you can talk into the
Thank
microphone.
you.
I believe in the last recruitment.
I want to ask you the question again because I want to educate my commissioner to the right. Okay.
Because it's an
How many
education class.
vacancies do we have in the fire department right now?
By the way, I'm Gil Hernandez, Deputy Fire Chief, Fire Department.
Thank you, sir.
Currently, we had 7 vacancies, but we have those 7 vacancies are currently in the recruit class that started last week.
How many people applied for those 7 positions?
We're probably 200 applicants, give or take. I'm not sure of the.
You said 200 to 300, correct?
Correct.
So you want to meet halfway, 250?
Sure.
So that's over 40 applications for each position, correct? 40, 30, something around those neck of the woods?
Correct.
Okay. Would you say that people want to work at the fire department? Yes or no?
Yes.
They do. They see it's a good department. There's a good pay. All the facilities are brand new. They're dealing with a great working class and residential community, and they're respected. Correct?
The Coral Gables Fire Department is very respected. I mean, the fire service as a whole is very respected, but yes, we have a very good reputation.
Okay, but I'm saying, are your employees happy?
I would say so, yes.
So you think that if 250, 300 people are applying for a job for 7 positions, it's because people are saying it's good to work in the city of Coral Gables, correct?
Certainly.
Could we right now pay you more money? Would you like
Absolutely.
to? Absolutely, right? Everybody wants. Who wants a raise? Everybody wants a raise. Everybody wants a raise. Listen, only the commission can unilaterally give themselves a raise, which thank God we push back through the level-headedness of 4 members of this commission. So my point is this, sir. Your employees are happy, correct?
I think so.
You think so? Just
Yes,
you can answer
yes,
well the
yes,
policy.
yes.
Okay, good. Feel confident in your answer.
Yes, and I'm very happy. Thank you.
Okay, good, and I'm grateful for that. So at the end of the day, we focused in not only on your employees but also the police. We had major issues with the police department, and it wasn't because of the chief or the assistant chief or anything. It was issues of we were underpaid. We had to increase their pay. We had to provide them, and I have no issues, and that's why I voted in favor of that contract. But when your own staff tells you not to vote for a contract because it's too rich and puts the city in a financial stress, I can't vote for it. But thank you for the input, and thank you for the fact that you're giving us the real facts on how many people apply for these positions, which are in the hundreds, because they want to come to work for the city, because they can work at any other municipality. By the way, is it a lot more difficult to get accepted as an employee of the fire department in the city of Coral Gables versus the other 34 municipalities in Miami-Dade County? Yes or no?
Yes, because of our standards are amongst the higher standards in Miami-Dade County. Because you need to be a firefighter and a paramedic, which some agencies hire you without having to be a paramedic.
Thank you for putting that on the record. The reason why I asked that question, which I have the answer for already, because I've been indoctrinated by our city manager and our chief, who always says how proud they are of our employees and the requirements, is because even with these strict standards, we still have 250 to 300 people applying for 7 positions. Because it's good to work in the city of Coral Gables. It's a good environment. It's a good opportunity. And guess what? If my colleague, Commissioner Castro, says it's all about the pay, they must be being paid right if you have 300 people that are applying here. They must have a good opportunity for extra income in regards to off-duty services. It must be a great place. Can it be better? It can always be better. But at the end of the day, we also have to balance the interests of the budget and not put ourselves in a position where financially, you were there, so was the police department under a previous city manager. When I was right before I got here, we had to cut your salaries, correct? And the fire department came to the table, and they gave up a lot. But at the end of the day, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to cut services. I don't want to cut salaries. That is reckless. That's not what you do. And that, in my opinion, was, again, too many benefits and really tough economic times, which came together, converged together, and caused the issue that we had when we had the panic. So thank you for providing your guidance.
If I may, before he leaves, why do we have the 7 vacancies?
Those were due to retirements, and I think maybe 1 or 2 are due to leaving to another agency.
Okay, so the fact that we have 200 to 300 people applying for the job really does not mean that those 200 or 300 people are really qualified. As the same for police, right now we have 24 vacancies, and the amount of people that are applying are high, but they don't pass the requirements or how strict we are in hiring employees. So just pointing out there how many people are applying for the job is really just muddying the conversation at this point, because yes, we do get a lot of applications, but at the same time, they're not qualified applications. They're not people we're really hiring.
Commissioner, if I may, please. The reason why people apply here is because it's a great place to work. I'm not reducing our standards. Our standards are what makes the city of Coral Gables and the fire department and the police department exceptional. If we reduce our standards, Chief, would we have a lot more people that apply to the city of Coral Gables? Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
Of course. So understand what you're saying, Commissioner. It doesn't make sense. Our standards are what push people away, and we still get 300 people that apply. Yes or no?
Yes, we do.
Okay? So you're not making sense. And I'm just trying to be as thoughtful as possible so you understand. We had 2 people that left, and I would love to keep them, but we had 5 people that retired. Now we're going to bring new people, we're going to groom them, and they're going to grow their way up the system. But to say that our standards are an issue, why, if we lowered our standards in the police department, which I will never lower my standards, at least I will vote against it, and the fire department, we would have double, 3 times. Chief Hudak, if we lowered our standards.
I never said lower our standards. Don't put words into my mouth.
If we lowered our standards.
Okay.
Good morning, sir. If we lowered our standards, do you think you'll get more applicants?
If I can get his money that he doesn't want, I'll take it, just for yourself personally. No, if we lower our standards, yeah, we're going to get more applications. And again, I think that's what makes Coral Gables Police Department different than every other police department, is the fact that we raised the standards in the 90s and we continue to be. Everybody else is catching up. So that's the competitive part of it. But no, if we raised it, we'd get probably more applicants, and we probably wouldn't have as many washouts.
So if I may also, just to correct the record, because I think it's inappropriate to mislead. The Commissioner Castro said that we have 24 vacancies. Can you break it down to 9 and 15, please, so the people who are listening today, who probably not many, because this is not the best topic to be listening to, capital improvements, but what is the breakdown and how does it work in regards to the 24 vacancies that we have, so that people understand?
So we have 9 of those vacancies were actually filled with bodies in them.
Yep.
The 15 additional vacancies is what this body over the last 3 years incrementally we put in, 5 a year. That was myself and the fire chief with the manager at the time talked about on the anticipated growth of the downtown area with the vertical rise. So our actual funded but never filled positions were 15. There were bodies were at 9. We currently had 2 graduations last week. We have slated for 7 in the academy starting at the end of this month. And we will continue with our background unit that's just doing a phenomenal job. We've also hired retirees from other departments that have left, and we're bringing in a senior leadership, and that's intentional, or they're all not necessarily brand new people in the academy, but people that come in. There is anticipated savings in that as well, because they are not getting into our retirement system. They're on a 401k, which is their option, so we're not impacting that right away. But it also makes us a stronger department with the seasoning that you get from being other large departments.
So, another question for the record. First and foremost, two questions. Number one, these additional 15 positions, when were they put in?
They were put in from 23, 24, and 25.
Okay.
We budgeted those ahead of time. We added 5 positions to our head count with the recommendation or the approval of the commission.
Who were the elected officials that were here that are on this dais right now that approved and voted in favor of that, of those additional positions for police and fire?
The additional positions, I think yourself and the vice mayor.
Okay, perfect. I want to put that on the record because when they say that I'm not pro police and fire, I voted in favor of additional and correct me if I'm wrong, it was the first time in possible, 15, 20 years that we've had new positions added to police and fire.
Yeah, full-time positions, yes. We were allowed to hire part-time positions when we did the neighborhood safety areas. So we were allowed to hire part-time positions that's handling traffic, the neighborhood traffic unit. But this was the first 15 bodies that we've added since, I want to say, 2008.
Okay, perfect. And the final question that I have for you, sir. What was at the height of our issue with census in regards to hiring? What was our vacancy? I remember it was in the 30s at one point, correct?
At one point, yes, sir. I think there was an exodus for greener pastures. One of the policies that I've had is that if somebody just goes in locally that they think the grass is greener, I won't bring them back. We have brought back other officers that have uprooted their families, gone someplace else. So yeah, we haven't. Everybody that leaves, we replace with new qualified officers.
So, in closing, I want to remind everyone, and I would like to the manager, please, if I may, can we put some of these crime statistics, which are very positive in regards to the work that has been done here, in regards to your team, and you, and your team, and the manager deserve all the credit for that work. At the end of the day, they're working hard. They're keeping the city safe. They're keeping our residents and the business community. I want to make sure that information gets out there in a positive way. We're doing that with the vacancies. Think about what we can do once we fill these positions. And by the way, another point, even with these vacancies, sir, have we missed 1 minute of a shift by any one of this? Have we missed one?
No, sir. Listen, the reason why our crime rate is where it's at is because of the hard work of the officers.
100%.
My job, and we've had this discussion through the negotiations, is to make sure we don't lose our services. And the reason why we're not is because we do have officers working mandatory overtime right now. We are getting close to getting back to the scheduling, which works for the officers and their families, which is the 410 schedule that we've had. We've had to stop that because of the vacancies. But going forward, if it wasn't for the work of the men and women of the police department on the road, we would not have the numbers that we have. And that is because, one, they don't have a choice, but two, they have embraced the fact of working those extra shifts.
And they're going above and beyond. They're working hard.
Absolutely.
Listen, I see them all the time throughout the city, getting out of the car. They have the light on in the middle of the night. They're searching, in neighborhoods, just like the firefighters, doing the same hard work. They're not just doing the minimum. They're going above and beyond.
Through the mayor.
Due to this, one last question, it's one of the chief, so he can have the same opportunity. As a result of the 7 vacancies you have, correct?
Correct.
Have you suffered 1 minute of a shift reduction or missing a shift or any issues where people cannot pick up the slack, which is really important?
No.
No? Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. One key issue on police. We have over four police officers per 1,000. Dade County has, we have a little over 4 police officers per, excuse me, per 1,000. Dade County has a little over 2 police officers per 1,000. So I just want to make that clear that to our residents that the police and fire are doing a fantastic job. We have a lot of officers, a lot of firefighters to make sure our residents are protected.
Thank you.
Through the mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you're right. It was you. It was the commission before I got elected that actually approved the 15 new officers. Let me go ahead and put on the record the reason that you did that is because you kept approving all these new vertical developments. To also put on the record, that's part of the reason why I got elected. And after then, all these vertical developments have not continued to be approved in the rapid amount they've been approved. But I am not here to argue with you, so why don't we go ahead and start the budget workshop?
Through the mayor.
Commissioner.
Through the
Okay.
mayor.
Hey,
Through the mayor.
it seems to me that.
Oh, you go ahead.
Commissioner Lott, go ahead.
Commissioner. Yeah, it seems to me, it's pretty obvious that over the last couple of years, there have been some decisions made with respect to how we're going to spend the taxpayers' money. Sometimes those decisions were made in contravention to the recommendation from finance, which I find particularly surprising since these are the experts when it comes to how money should be best spent in a financially prudent and a fiduciary's responsibility being met. We just came off some elections where I think it was extraordinarily clear that the electorate was unhappy with the way, among other things, money was being spent through decisions made directly by this commission. And as they say, the party is over and someone's got to pay the bill. So I'm staring here at Dina and Paula, and it's a very difficult place to be sitting, looking at them, as beautiful as they are, giving me a finger-wagging look as we begin this capital projects review. But I do believe that while the conversation has been spirited, it's robust, it's important that the residents understand how we got here. I also think that we must make some difficult decisions when it comes to finances, because if we do not pivot quickly now, decisions will be made for us, not by us, which I don't believe anyone on this dais is in favor of. My suggestion is that we continue with the capital projects review.
Madam Vice Mayor.
So I just need to correct the misinformation, because this was the same sort of thing that was put out during a campaign that clearly the residents knew the difference in. The zoning increases that have happened in the Central Business District happened long before the mayor stepped onto this dais. You've been on the dais for well over a decade now. Over a decade ago, there was a need to increase density. It was the perception in the Central Business District because downtown was dead. We've all been trying to increase the amount of businesses down there, and the philosophy at the time was to have places where people can live, work, and play in the same area, where you have both residential and businesses mixed use in there. The height increase and the unlimited density that was allowed in the Central Business District was done 14 years ago, I think it was, when it was done. None of us were on this dais then. We are with that legacy. On top of that, we have additional densities being placed upon us by the state, okay? That's going to be a constant threat. We must balance it. You have the RTZ coming in. We must balance it. So rather than trying to make this a finger-pointing match, I'm going to suggest that we move forward, let's address the capital budget, and hear the recommendations of our esteemed professional finance director and their staff.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we can be here all day talking about how we've gotten here, what has put us in this situation, what the outlook is going to look like. We've been here for 51 minutes, and we have yet to hear from staff about what they want to talk to us about, how they see this moving forward, and give us options. I think I would like to hear from them. I think let's make this productive. Let's have open minds on what we are looking at, what we're hearing from staff, so that we can make educated decisions going forward, and let's move forward. Let's not continue in the past.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. Mr. Manager, will you do me a favor, sir, please, just for the record, and present at the next commission meeting if you can? I'd like to understand a little bit about what's over. Give me a yearly rundown of the developments that have been approved here in the city of Coral Gables. And for the record.
Yes, Mayor.
And for the record, just like with, extortionist blogs and certain people that come to commission meetings, it's absolutely absurd, the statements that are made here that are absolute lies in an effort to sway the people. The people spoke. The numbers were double-digit wins. I almost won by 20%. Commissioner Lara won resoundingly. Resoundingly. Vice Mayor Anderson, it was a statement that was made. It's clear what the people want. People want governance, fiscal responsibility. Let me put it on the record to educate my friend to the right. I voted against, and it cost me dearly, the upzoning of Miracle Mile. I voted against the parking garages on Andalusia. I voted against the height increase of the Agave project. I voted against the Gables station. I voted against the doubling of the density. I'll slow down, Maria, so you can write it all down. I voted against the doubling of the density in the North Gables area, which now is at 125 units a square foot when it was, 125 units an acre when it was at 50. All these decisions have consequences. So you can just broadly blame everything on me, it's perfectly fine. But the last 2 years speak for itself. And the residents were clear when they went to the ballot box what they wanted and what they don't want. And God willing, in November, decisions will be swift. And we will see a change for the better. So moving forward, I apologize for taking almost an hour, and also for not starting the meeting on time, which has become customary. Madam Assistant Director, please take the meeting over.
Thank you. I would be remiss to not acknowledge that I did not recognize my staff. And so my staff consists of Pedro Sanchez. He is our senior management and budget analyst. He does the majority of the work on this, on capital. And Chris Garcia, who's also behind me, and Ivan Baez, they are both management and budget analysts, and Anami Garcia, who is our grants and internal audit coordinator. And only because of them can I come up here and recite these projects very quickly so we can get out on time. So thank you, staff, for all of your support and all of your hard work. Okay, so we are here to discuss the fiscal 26-2030 5-year capital plan. We are going to discuss the recommendation for funding for fiscal 26 for these projects. Many of these projects you are familiar with. They are not new projects. They are projects that we have either started and are requesting additional funding for, or renewal and replacement matrices that we prioritize funding for each year. I will try to go quickly, but I will also be thoughtful about the time that we spend on making these decisions. So I am sharing my screen. CCTV, am I sharing my screen? Make sure I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so you have this very small font spreadsheet in front of you. I apologize. I won't say my joke again because it's really not that funny. So this is the list of capital projects that are included in our 5-year plan. As I mentioned to you before, starting in March, the departments submit to us primarily Public Works and Parks because they carry the brunt of most of the capital projects, but we also have fire, police, and other departments. IT are very integral parts of this process. So they submit to us their funding needs for fiscal 26 and their plans for future years. And so this document, just for the public, most of you have seen this before, I will go through very quickly. To the very left, you have the project names. We categorize the projects by different areas. The column here shows the 25 funding budget funding that was provided to these projects in fiscal year 25. The next two columns show the current available or encumbered amounts in these projects. And then column G here is the request for fiscal year 26. As you know, and from this discussion, we will not be able to fund all of the requests or all of these projects. And so that is the discussion today. And then the future columns are the future funding that these projects need. And just for the purpose of being able to see this on the screen, I am going to hide the future year columns for this discussion purpose. I think I'm going to leave 27 and we'll see how that works out. I'm going to hide the 5-year project total. This will be reflected in the capital budget book when it comes out. And then moving along to the right-hand side, which you can see on your printed and the public cannot see until I present it. These are now the funding, the available funding that we have. So the different sources of funding that we have for each of these projects. Most of our projects are funded from the general fund. So general capital, we transfer funding from general fund to capital. Another significant source of funding is our water and stormwater funds, and so those will be Fund 40 and 410. And then we have smaller funds like the roadway fund. We have the transportation fund, which is our CITT revenue, which you will see here is zero. We do not have any excess CITT revenue to fund projects for next fiscal year, or at least we're not estimating at this time. Then we have the parking fund, which is an enterprise fund. Their projects are funded with their fees, and fleet management, which is primarily funded from their charges to other departments. So that can come from the general fund or from the other funds that we talked about. And so as we go through here, I'm going to identify for you the projects, where we are recommending funding those projects and at what level. What I'd like to show you very quickly, and we've kind of had this conversation already, is that this general fund, this general capital funding, how this is broken out. And so we are bringing in 77.4 million of general funding into the capital projects, plus an additional 2 million, almost 2.1 million that the general fund is contributing to the country club for projects at the country club. The breakout for that is that we are bringing in $8.6 million of prior year. So fiscal 24 ended the year with fund balance. And so we are bringing in $8.6 million from fiscal year 24 one-time fund balance that is available to us to use for capital. We are bringing in approximately $1.16 million in fiscal year 26 estimated capital interest. So because we have funds, we have cash in our capital fund, it is accruing interest, and we are able to apply that interest to our capital projects. And so this is considered one-time money.
Is there any way to zoom into the little yellow highlighter or whatever that is?
Better?
A little bit. There.
Okay.
Like the Excel sheet.
8.6 one-time fiscal year 24, 1.16 fiscal year 26 estimated interest income as one-time funding. We are bringing in $560,000 from the building reserve to fund their portion of IT renewal and replacement used at the Development Services Department. And then 12.9 million, so that's that 12 million that we talked about of recurring revenue that we're bringing in from the general fund into this program, and another $4.1 million of general fund one-time funding in fiscal year 26. So some of our revenues we treat as one-time revenues, and some of our revenues that we know we can count on, we treat as recurring, like our property values, okay? And you'll see a little bit how that breakout works. I'm going to hide this just for conversation purposes. Make it a little bit smaller. Okay. So the first category on this list is our capital matrices. Our capital matrices are programs that we have established that are based on the useful life of our assets, that we try to fund the renewal and replacement of our assets based on that useful life. We always try to fund these capital matrices with recurring money, because we believe that this is our first priority, is to maintain the assets that we currently have. Our departments go through, they update these lists every year. You will see that one of the most significant items on the list is our IT infrastructure. This includes all of our cybersecurity, all of our network infrastructure, all of the software that maintains all of our IT systems throughout the city. And so the request is 2.7 million. And I'll start by telling you that we are fully funding the IT matrices. In some years, we have had to reduce the ability to fund our IT matrices to fund other projects. We are recommending that we fully fund 100% of the IT matrices request. And so we are using 6.8 million of that $12 million that I just presented to you of recurring money to fund these matrices. And I'll go through very quickly for your benefit and for ours, the projects. You have the network IT infrastructure matrix. $2.7 million. Public art is funded by AIPP, Art in Public Places money, which is a fee on permits for public art, and so that can be funded from this funding. Citywide roof replacements, HVAC, so air conditioning systems at all of our facilities, elevator replacements, entrances to fountains and refurbishment of entrances and fountains. Motor vehicle replacement. So motor vehicle replacement is not shown as funded from general capital. It is going to be all the way to the left. It is funded by the fleet fund. You can see here it is $4 million. For those of you who are not familiar with the history, this city many years ago, over 10 years ago now, had a history of not replacing their vehicles timely. Some of our vehicles and our equipment, our garbage trucks, our police cars were very old. They had holes in the bottom of them. We had welders trying to just keep them together. And so we continue to invest in the replacement of our fleet, and I think everybody would agree you don't see that type of vehicle any longer. So $4 million for the replacement of motor vehicles and equipment around the city. Upgrades to city garages. So you also notice here it is not under the general fund. These are being funded with parking revenues, and so just under $1.2 million, $1.16 million for the upgrades and improvements to garages, and $887,000 to city parking lots, and that includes the implementation of pay stations at garages. And so even though we've gone electronic digitally on collecting a lot of our revenues, we still have to provide the ability for people to pay in cash, and so this will do so in our garages that we've gone to maybe pay by phone. Yes, sir.
Just a quick point, I asked that the document be emailed to us, so we now have it on our emails. I know I was having trouble reading it, so if you're having trouble, you can get it on your devices.
So are you going to, just going to
Of course.
dovetail on that, you're going to give us the Excel version so we can pull out the little bubbles?
I can provide to you the Excel version of this after the meeting, if that's okay?
Yeah, no, after the meeting, yeah,
Yes.
so when we want to go back and refresh our memories. And
Certainly.
and
Now,
since,
keep in
since I've
mind,
interrupted you, just to emphasize for the public, IT is just not, fun with computers. It's our police services, our fire services, it's everything that we provide throughout our city.
yes, that's an important point. So one of the things in IT and one of the things in renewal of facilities, right, is that these matrices will continue to increase as we rehabilitate facilities, add networks into our systems. So here in this increase to $2.7 million from $2.5 million of IT last year. Last year we funded 2.5. This year they're requesting just under 2.8 is due to the facilities that we've added on, services that we've added on. So Firehouse 4 will have their own systems, which we didn't have to support before. So all of that is built into these numbers. So I'll continue down the list. So all of the matrices here are, the remaining matrices are funded with general capital funds. So park replacement matrices funds the replacement of furniture, turf, the maintenance of the equipment that we already have at existing parks. This does not necessarily fund the refurbishment or enhancement of a park. Those are further on down the list. So we're fully funding that. The radio system replacement matrix, this is managed by the police department, but they manage the replacement and support of the entire radio system for police, fire, and all the radios citywide, including public works, parking, code enforcement, all have radios as well. Police rifle replacement program, and so we fund the replacement of the rifles in the police department and any additions that may be needed for new officers that come on board. Police station gym equipment and fire station gym equipment, one skip below it. We added the gyms at the public safety building, and so we should start to fund the replacement of that equipment when it becomes old. We did not do that in the past, and they had some really old equipment at some of the older facilities. Fire equipment replacement matrix. So this is also the renewal and replacement of all of the equipment that fire uses in their service. So fire rescue equipment, their stretchers, their AEDs, their blood monitors, everything that they use, we fund the replacement and renewal of those things. And so you can see here that the matrices are being funded just over $6.8 million by general capital money, $54,000 out of our in public places funds, and then $2 million out of the parking funds, and $4 million out of fleet management, which is then passed on to the other departments because it is an internal service. And the last column on the worksheet will show you what is not funded or how much was not funded. So as we go down the list, you will start to see not funded amounts be populated, okay? The second section of our list are the priority projects funded in the fiscal year 23 plan. So I've shared with all of you, and most people who watch these meetings know, that back in fiscal 2023, we experienced a significant increase in property values, and staff and the commission had the foresight to say, let's not just spend that money, let's put a plan to use that money. And so we committed to using at least $5 million each year towards funding priority projects. And so those priority projects were identified with these projects listed here: the City Hall complex, the gondola building restoration, Venetian facility, Alhambra Water Tower, Ponce Circle Park, which is broken out, and 2 projects here, Phillips Park renovation, and the development of Firehouse 4. And so each year for since 23, we have been investing at least $5 million. As you can see here, last year we put in over $6 million, and this year the request is for $21 million. But the majority of that includes the City Hall campus, which we've talked about at length, so I'm not going to get into it unless anybody has any specific questions. But the need for City Hall is almost $8 million, based on the $26 million estimate, very rough estimate that we have. We won't have a good estimate until we have the assessment finalized and some construction docs. So right now, the need would be for an additional $19.8 million. This already reflects the movement of funds between Phillips Park and City Hall that was done at the May meeting. And so Venetian Pool is requesting $1.4 million. That is now for the main building. So that is to move on to the renovation of the main building at the facility. And then Ponce Circle Park, in a recent commission meeting, you approved some art that's going to be paid out of the arts fund. They're now going to need $100,000 for the installation of that art. And so that is also updated here. And so true to the plan, we are proposing funding $7 million from general fund towards this plan this year. So $6 million for City Hall, and this would be recurring money. So we had always said that we would fund this plan with at least $5 million of recurring money. I am proposing bringing in the $6 million for the matrices and the $6 million for City Hall as recurring money into this fiscal year plan, and then bringing in another $1 million for the Venetian facility for that main building. And my proposal here would be that recently you approved the sale of TDRs in an amount of $361,960. My proposal and recommendation would be that we use those TDRs, which can only be used for historic facilities, towards Venetian Pool. Some might ask, why not use it towards City Hall? I believe that this amount will go further in the Venetian Pool than it would at City Hall, and the Venetian Pool I think we all agree that it also needs it. And so my proposal recommendation would be, and the manager's proposal would be, to use it at the Venetian Pool. Yes, Commissioner?
It's a question for the city attorney, actually. Pond Circle Park, the installation of this art piece can be incorporated into the design that the developer is working on, correct? Mm-hmm. So we would not have to expend additional funds for this, as it can be incorporated into their plan.
So I think it's a separate project, but we can certainly look into that. We can talk to staff and see if that could be part of it, part of the design.
Because maybe that can be a savings to us, because it could be part of the design that they're currently working on for that park.
Commissioner, I'll just add that it is coming from Art and Public Places Fund, so it isn't from our general fund. So, if the developer's willing to do it and leaves more in our Art and Public Places, fantastic. But being that it's being used from non-taxpayer dollars, it's not going to tremendously impact what we're able to do, because we can only use these Art and Public Places funds for, I'll let you answer that question.
Significant maintenance or purchase of art.
Right, so, if we can keep it in that fund, maybe that's an extra art piece that we can purchase in the future, or part of an art piece, so I'd just like to see if, I just wanted to get your take, Madam City Attorney, on whether that can be requested of the developers working on the
I
park.
can look into it with staff and see what, how this has been already budgeted and so forth, and we can look at that in the context of the agreement for Pond Circle Park.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Commissioner, we're arranging a meeting in the next 2 weeks to look at that project and look at Pond Circle Park, which is being done by the Alan Morris Company, and we can get back with you after. The idea is to have them fund really the entire project.
And I agree with that approach, because extraordinary maintenance we do need on some other art pieces. There's one very close by, this City
Yes.
Hall, that could use some extraordinary maintenance.
Agreed. Thank you.
So the approach that we would take is that in order for us to use the funds, it would need to be appropriated. That's something that we can work out between July and again through September, when we adopt these numbers at the end, as part of the budget process. Thank you. So you can see here, as mentioned, that this would be funding, and I'll go to the end, $7.5 million, just over $7.5 million towards that fiscal year 23 plan, the plan that was established in fiscal year 23, including art and public places money, bringing in the TDR funds to be used at the Venetian Pool, and the general funds towards City Hall and the Venetian complex. And so, as I kind of mentioned in this last discussion about the art, this plan will be built into the July 1 budget presented to you, and then over the summer, any additional funding that we might receive, the hope would be that we get additional revenue estimates from the state, et cetera, we will continue to build into this plan and fund more where we can. The next section of this capital list are critical projects. So these are projects that we consider as staff. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, how come we're not funding the Alhambra Water Tower on 2027?
Let's
That
Let's
was
go,
the next one.
let's go through this one at a time.
That was the next one.
On the Alhambra Water Tower. So in the priority projects, the Alhambra Water Tower, in the critical projects, the Alhambra Water Tower is currently funded at just under $2.3 million. That tower, we don't have an actual construction estimate. And so the previous list that the commission saw, there was an ask of $100,000 or $150,000. And that ask was just to kind of increase some construction that we had moved to design, but that's not actually the estimate for the project. And so the discussion is that when staff has a good estimate for the project, we will then address the funding need for that project, because at this time, we don't know what the additional funding need will be above the 2.3 that project has already. And so that's why we're not ready to determine how much that is, because they're still working through the estimates.
So I'll just add, when there's a shovel-ready plan, and I know I passed the prior designs on to Historic so they could work on those, because I received them from somebody, then we'll have an estimate. Now, we may receive other TDR monies, and you can make a recommendation at that time whether it should go into Alhambra Water Tower. But for it just to sit there and we have an Venetian Pool that needs to get finished, you have to make a decision, and it was your decision too, that we need to prioritize Venetian Pool because we do have plans.
Right, it's
Through
the
the
manager and
mayor?
I's recommendation at this point.
Through the mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. With the drawings are being completed now. This water tower has a continuous maintenance issue. The plans that were done before are primarily applicable now, and we need to do a structural assessment to see how much work is going to happen. So we are in the process of looking into that now.
Thank you, Manager.
Does that answer your question? Yes? Critical projects, so these are a group of projects that we consider to contribute to life safety. And so the first project is emergency generator installation. The request of $920,000 is for the installation of a generator at the country club and the design for a generator at the youth center. A little bit because of funding availability, but also because of planning, we are recommending funding $240,000 of that $920 for the design of a generator at the country club and the design, and then determine future construction cost at a later date, so probably for the next fiscal year. The idea would be that the generator at the country club would be used to maintain the food. In the meantime, we're not going to have that done for this hurricane season. In the meantime, we will probably rent or lease a generator to make sure that we are preserving those items. Recertification of city facilities, and so you will recall that over the last 2 years, we committed to funding $2.4 million into the recertification needs of city facilities. And so our Public Works Department has been working on the assessments required for all of the facilities that need to be recertified, and they are in the process of getting construction estimates and working through the recertification needs. They've made a lot of progress. We had a proposal to start funding each year towards the recertification, but for this year, their request was just to start with $100,000 in order to put that in another project where it may be better served this year. We are not funding that $100,000 because they have sufficient money to move forward with the work that they have. Sidewalk repair and replacement program. So each year, we have committed to funding the repair and replacement of sidewalks. And the reason that it's in this category is because we consider that to be a safety issue. And so last year we funded $1.5 million. The request is for $2 million. We are funding the full $2 million, but we are funding it partially out of roadway money, so $1 million out of roadway, just under $1 million out of general capital, and we have this little fund of neighborhood rehabilitation program money, so $807 out of that program to fund the full $2 million towards sidewalk repairs and maintenance. You will see later on this list, there are 2 more categories of sidewalks. You're gonna see new sidewalks and crosswalks, and so that's not in this category because we consider the repair and replacement of existing sidewalks to be more of the life safety measure that we should take, or the safety measure that we should take.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Yes. Do you feel? I know that we've increased it by 500,000. It's more than significant amount. But do you still feel that that $2 million is sufficient for us to not seek any legal challenges of people falling or whatever the case is?
So I can't speak to the liability. What I can speak to is that this city is a tree city. And so for as long as we love our trees, which I am fully in favor of all the trees, police and fire, but for as long as we continue to have trees that grow and roots that grow, they will continue to damage our sidewalks. And so this is a program that we are always going to have to invest money, and as much money as we could give it, it would take, because just the nature of our city and the sidewalks that we have and the proximity to trees is always going to generate the need for us to renew and replace and to grind and to repair those sidewalks. And so I can't speak to the liability, but I think our staff does an amazing job. You can see here that of the $1.5 million that we gave them, as of April, late April, they had encumbered $500,000 and they only have $200,000 left. So they do an amazing job of using every penny that we give them. They combine that with other projects that they may have. So I think that.
So I'll add to that. I mean, the root protection that's added for when we're planting new trees will help avert new needs in the future. The planting of new sidewalks is done in a more meandering fashion, so they're not so close to the trees themselves. So you have all that to deal with. The sidewalk extensions, or I should say the gaps, what category does that one fall in?
So that is going to be in the green category, the recurring projects.
I'll wait.
It's going to be just almost a third of a way down. Yeah,
Okay, well, you passed the eye exam. Yeah, well, it's called new sidewalks, so, but these are gaps. I mean, there's areas that I could tick off for you, but I think I've covered them with the manager.
So you're going to notice, starting in this section, that I highlighted in a lighter yellow certain projects. And so anything that's highlighted in a lighter yellow is a project that we did not put any funding towards in our recommendation. So just to kind of make it easier to read, I know that we're going to get into a bigger part of the list where there's a lot of projects. Okay.
Gotcha.
So moving down, so we're funding the full $2 million. The request for $325,000 for bridge repairs and improvements. So we have 11 bridges throughout the city. I don't know the breakdown of pedestrians and drivable bridges, but these $325,000 go up to building funding to be able to do repairs to our bridges when necessary and needed. And so you can see here that they currently had about $1.1 million. We recommend continuing to put funding towards that, so $325,000 in fiscal year 26, and that will come from the general capital money. Utilities. So this is my favorite section because it funds itself for the most part. And so utility improvements are comprised of sanitary sewer and stormwater projects. All of these projects are fully funded based on the revenue that they generate from the fees in their funds. One project that we significantly increased the funding towards this year is the force main replacement program. Because of interest income, due diligence in our department to, only spend what they needed, they had some fund balance that we were able to bring into this fund, and so we are funding $5.2 million into the force main replacements. Many of these projects we seek grants for, and so many of them have grant funding, and much of this funding is matching funding. They have 2 matrices or 3 matrices within these programs to continuously maintain our system. And so we do our best to invest as much money as possible into these programs. And so you will see that a combined ask of $14.5 million. And I'm going to jump up in a second. And those are both fully funded with their revenues in the 400 and the 410 fund, which are stormwater and sanitary sewer, fully funding that $14.5 million. One item that I'll highlight is the sea level rise mitigation program, which is a program that was established several years ago. And those are specific fees that are in the water bill that go towards building up a fund for sea level rise mitigation. The idea is that those funds will be used towards grant matches or appropriations that we may receive in the future when there's actually some plan that can mitigate sea level rise. And so those funds are restricted and only used for that purpose at this point. And so that's a significant number that you see in this budget. If there's no questions, I'll go down to the next section, which we categorize as recurring projects. And so although these are not matrices, many of them are projects that we try to fund each year to put funding into these programs because they are recurring costs that we see each year. And so citywide litter receptacles, currently we are doing a project on Ponce de Leon that will replace most of the receptacles along Ponce. And then the funding that is currently available will supplement that to finish replacing any receptacles that are needed and that did not fall within that project. Yes, sir.
So with respect to that on Ponce, is this based on the number of receptacles based on a minimum established by code, or is it somebody's done an analysis to say we have just as many as we need? Do we need more? Because yesterday we had a pretty focused conversation about trash problem, especially along Ponce.
Yes. So the receptacles on Ponce are generally placed at the 4 corners of every intersection. There are a couple of receptacles that are in between the street. I think it's on the longer streets and typically in the busier areas. And so I know that solid waste over the years has moved some of those receptacles around. The receptacles that'll be replaced with the Bronx project are part of the trolley project. So typically at any trolley stop, there will also be a receptacle. So we try to be methodical about it. People and their trash is something that is difficult to figure out why people place their trash where they place it, or how they use receptacles. But there is thoughtfulness put into where the receptacles are. I think that it could probably be revisited as the downtown area changes. You revisit where your receptacles should be. Does that answer?
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
If I could just dovetail off of what Commissioner Lara was talking about, it's something that I think we should explore, the addition of receptacles. If you look at Walt Disney's model, how did they determine how far apart their garbage waste bins were? How long it would take somebody to eat a hot dog? And that's how they determined how far away they are. And you can't say that Disney's ever dirty. It's always clean. So it's something to consider, the potential of adding, because maybe some corners are close to each other, but some blocks are extremely long, and we may need to add additional waste bins, and that may address the issue. Just putting it out there.
Well, to follow up on what Commissioner Fernandez is talking about, he and I actually talked about this as we concluded yesterday's meeting and we were walking out, that the two of us have experienced, just like everyone else has possibly experienced. Sometimes you look to the left and you look to the right and you go, where do I throw this out, right? So it's beyond my capacity to understand, like you just said, right? People and their trash. But maybe it's something we can have a conversation, Mr. Manager, about later, because it may be a little more complicated than just, equidistant or dividing by 2 or 4, depending on, but rather where there seems to be an accumulation or unreasonable accumulation of trash might be one way to go about it. I don't know how to go about it, but I think if people see a trash can, they're more likely to use it than have to hunt for it. I hope they are as conscientious as Commissioner Fernandez and I are, but we can't guarantee that. So to facilitate putting the trash somewhere, we should follow up and have a conversation about that.
So I'm going to just add to that. We do have a citywide, the downtown cleanup.
Yes.
It's a great data gathering area. I had mentioned specifically the corner at the museum because I have picked up bags and bags of stuff underneath the bench multiple times. And it's because we have certain people that will sit there and just leave their leftovers, multiple bags of it there. So we need a trash can there. So it's sort of like how universities determine where we're going to put sidewalks. You see where it is being dumped.
Through the mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, we will take a look at that and look to see what our plan is and see if we can further increase or what we need to do as far as locations to see if we can avoid litter.
So the folks doing the cleanup can take pictures of recommended spots. And that's my first recommended spot is right there in the corner of the museum.
Certainly, all good points. And I know the Public Works Director and Assistant Director for Solid Waste are also here hearing the points. So thank you. So citywide receptacles, we are actually not funding additional funding because there's currently funding available for the replacement of those that need to be replaced now. Funding of LPR speed trailers, some people's favorites. These are the license plate readers that you see throughout the city, and so we have those equipment and we fund the replacement or additions of those equipment each year, so $100,000. Waterproofing of historic facilities and non-historic facilities. And so this is a matrices that we tried to develop to begin to fund the waterproofing of our facilities. You can see here that the initial ask is for $500,000 and $800,000, and that is just to begin to fund the need of waterproofing our facilities. We have not been able to fund this in the past. So the waterproofing is essential to maintaining our facilities to make sure that we are not getting leaks that will then damage the interior and then cause us to have to rehabilitate the buildings. In the future, City Hall will be done with the broader projects, and when we do certain renovations, we include that in our renovation. We are not proposing funding those matrices or that continuous funding this year, but we are proposing funding $105,000 to go towards sealing the museum. So I think we all know that the museum does need some outside exterior work, and so that is what this $105,000 would go towards. Again, highlighted in the yellow, we are not funding any non-historic facilities at this point. ADA remediation at city facilities, and so you all know that we have a program, we have a plan to do some ADA remediation at certain facilities that have been identified through a report that was developed several years ago. The $456,000 that is currently prior year available, most of that is going towards work that is needed at the youth center. The $200,000 that is being requested and proposed for next year out of the general capital funds would also most likely, for the majority, go towards work that's needed at the youth center for ADA remediations. And some of the things are as small as moving the location of a toilet paper holder or a doorway and things of that nature. So Public Works has began that work, and we are proposing funding that $200,000.
Sorry to interrupt. Are we going to be holding back the proposed matching funds for the appropriation request that we have on this item? We have an appropriation request outstanding for ADA remediation in the Central Business District.
So we currently do not have anything set aside for that. We would have to identify what that broader plan would be. I think that much of that would come out of, where's Public Works? I think that much of that would come out of sidewalks, probably sidewalk repairs and crosswalks.
Well, it's because a lot of that would be the handicap parking and, you know, the flared area, what would you call it? The aprons.
Good morning, Vice Mayor. The ADA appropriation, we've been told that's for the Central Business District. It appears that we're going to be receiving that appropriation.
Okay, that's excellent. Yeah. So then we would use sidewalk funds.
Correct.
To be the matching dollars, because it is a sidewalk issue primarily at this point.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And I do have my list, I found it. So yes, so the appropriation request was for about $310,000, and our match would be 50% of that for $310,000, and that would likely come from the $2 million in sidewalks, and Public Works is usually good about identifying any other funds that could be used towards that.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Maintenance of historic facilities. So this is the resolution that was established by that was proposed or sponsored by Commissioner Castro last year, and the commission approved to put $50,000 towards the maintenance of historic facilities each year. And so last year we funded $50,000, and this year we would propose to fund the second $50,000. That resolution only directed us to set aside the $50,000 each year. What I would like to hear from the commission is if we could take that combined $100,000 and put it towards a historic project this year, or if you'd like us to build up that project to a certain amount before we put it towards a specific facility.
I would say that maintenance and applying the funds is a best way to use it, because the earlier we fix something, the more damage we avoid.
Yeah, through the chair, that was the whole purpose of that. What I really wanted is that year by year for it to increase just a little bit, so that we don't get to the point of something deteriorating at some point, and we keep maintaining that a landmark or historic monument.
So currently, based on the available funding, we are only proposing putting the $50,000 towards that project. That would give us $100,000. What I would then recommend is that we take that $100,000 and put it towards the waterproofing of the museum. That will free up the $100,000 that I am currently giving to the museum for another project, which I will work on with staff to fund, if that makes sense.
And where is the $100,000 that is going to, from what fund is that coming from? The general?
So both amounts are coming from the general fund, but I am setting aside $50,000 for the historic maintenance, and I'm setting aside $100,000 for the museum. So they're both coming from the same funding sources, but if I take that $100,000 now and put it towards the museum waterproofing, I'll be able to take that $100,000 that I have for the museum waterproofing and put it towards something else on our list that you see is not maybe getting funded.
Yeah, Well, the purpose is to maintain historic facilities, and waterproofing is critically important. I think a thoughtful evaluation by staff as to what is the next highest priority, whether we fully funding on Venetian Pool, or we have another project that we can get more mileage out of that dollar for to prevent additional damage. So, I mean, we could easily just say, put it in City Hall, but I'd like to hear your thoughtful analysis.
Yeah, I think if you allow us to consider potentially putting it towards the waterproofing of the museum, and then taking the other $100,000 back out of the museum and putting it somewhere else, and give us, we'll bring back to you in the budget process on July 2nd, where we have allocated funds. And so there'll be a couple of tweaks between here and July 2nd on what actually goes into capital. So if you give us, it's not a lot of money, it's $100,000, but if we can, it just frees up $100,000.
Through the chair, if there's any possibility, if we can go ahead and do that, but that $100,000 maybe put it towards, because I brought up so many items yesterday in our budget hearing, in our commission meeting about sidewalks. And I know that we don't have sufficient funding to be able to cover all sidewalk repairs. So if we can put that $100,000 into what really residents are really complaining about, I would love that.
Well, it's designated for historic. Let's let staff do their thoughtful evaluation, because in order to put money into sidewalks, you also have to evaluate the capacity to build them out. You have rainy season to deal with. You can't be pouring sidewalks when it's raining. So let staff do their work. They'll come back with a recommendation, okay?
We still have a list, so you might find something on the list that I didn't fund that you feel also may warrant the $100,000.
Through the chair. So, right, so we've just decided then, right, we're going to go with your recommendation. We'll take this money that was allocated for,
Historic maintenance.
right, to allow you, that'll go to the museum's waterproofing, to allow you then to come back and tell us what proposals you may have
For the other $100,000, yeah.
Okay, good.
Right, now I'm going to suggest that we let her finish the presentation, because we may have to weigh certain projects, that 100,000 may be just what we need to finish something that's in dire need, okay?
Through the chair, why don't you just ask us at the end of the budget hearing, and I think we'll make a better decision afterwards.
Okay,
when
we'll
we hear everything.
We have a long list, so I'll keep
Yeah.
going. We still have, depends on the size of the page, but like 3 pages. Okay. Miracle Mile, Giralda Streetscape pavers, and so, I'm sorry, I skipped over installation of multi-pay stations, and I apologize, I misspoke. The other project is for garages. This is for installation of multi-pay stations throughout the city. So years ago, we had coin meters. Some of those still exist, but for the most part, we've put multi-pay stations throughout the city, along with pay by phones. And so $250,000 to continue that program. That $250,000 will come from the parking fund. Okay. Miracle Mile Giralda Streetscape paver maintenance, and so these are the replacement of the pavers along Giralda and Miracle Mile. Also, the issues that we have at the crosswalks. I know that we're looking for long-term solutions at the crosswalks, but we have the need to fund this program continuously, so $250,000 from the general capital for those pavers. Purchase of land, and so this is the project that we just expended funds at yesterday's commission meeting to purchase that property for about $3.1 million. And so the purchase of land fund, over the years, we have funded this with impact fees. So impact fees that are collected through the permitting process, 65% of the park's impact fees go towards purchase of land and are restricted to use for the purchase of land. In the past, we have matched these funds with general capital funds, but over the last few years, we have not. And so although we have a request, this is an ongoing request that we've always just listed at $500,000 to try and fund at least $500,000. We are funding $440,540 based on the current available impact fees that are restricted to purchase of land. If that number goes up between here and July 2nd, I will put more into here. If it goes up between here and September, I will also add more into it, but we are not supplementing that with the general capital funds And that is what the mayor was referring to earlier in the meeting, where we are over the last couple of years, we have not been supplementing it with general capital funds. Maybe we will revisit that in the future if we have more funding and less needs. And so that $400,000, over $400,000 will come from from impact fees for purchase of land. Coral Gables Country Club improvements. So Coral Gables Country Club improvements are asking for $850,000, $851,541. And so although the country club is its own fund, it is currently still subsidized by the general fund. And so they are not necessarily garnering sufficient revenue to cover capital improvements. They have gotten better. They are closer to zero revenue over expenditures for their operating, but the general fund is still contributing to capital improvements. And so the country club includes improvements of the pool deck, and it includes
Okay, they're the only ones that don't have to ask permission to speak, right? Yeah, that's a funny. Yeah, for Windows.
$150,000 towards irrigation improvements. So if we plant, we have to irrigate, right, Dina?
Yes, or you're wasting money.
$72,000 for the maintenance of lease equipment, $564,000 for pool improvements, and $65,000 for tennis improvements. Thank you
We've
for that
lost your
courtesy.
screen.
So $850,000.
We've lost your big screen.
Guys? Oh, they were trying to capture me. Thank you. So $850,000 is broken up in that manner. You can see most of it will go towards the pool deck improvements. Granada Golf Course improvements, $749,580. We are proposing also funding. This is a revised estimate for the new version of the shelters. And so previously the estimate was upwards of $900,000. The additional funding needed has gone down to just under $750,000, and we propose funding that. Again, that'll come from general capital funding. Police body worn cameras. So this is a program that you are all familiar with. Our police department has a police body worn camera program. We are required to replace and renew these cameras and maintain them, and so an annual funding of $700 and just under $50,000 towards the police body worn cameras. Park AEDs, you are all familiar with this. Started off as a pilot program to put the emergency poles with AEDs and a call button at 2 of our parks it began with. We are proposing continuing to fund, continuing to install these poles in additional parks, and so $500,000 towards continuing that program. Citywide alleyway paving improvement, and so this is, we try to continuously fund alleyway improvements. I'll be honest with you, I almost didn't fund this because I was tight on funding. As revenue comes in, I try to fund as much as possible, but we know that our alleyways could use more work. So $200,000 towards that program. As you can see, our staff is using those funds, and prior year available has whittled down a bit. New sidewalk installations, and so here we get to those other sidewalk items. I'm just going to scroll up so it's easier to follow. So we are now on this row, new sidewalk installations and sidewalk extensions and crosswalk installations. And so the ask is for $750,000 in new sidewalk installations and $250,000 for crosswalks and extensions. And so we are proposing, I believe we are fully funding both of these requests. I'm going to go to the end. So we are fully funding both of those requests. Some of the funding is coming from new sidewalk funding is coming from impact fees. So we have mobility impact fees that we can use for increased capacity, and we believe that the funding of new sidewalks is eligible for that. We are also funding $300,000 from roadway fees, roadway revenue, and so that will fully fund the new sidewalks with the addition of about $30,000, $31,873 from the general fund.
Excuse me, through the mayor?
Yes.
That's why we break up existing sidewalks and new sidewalks. Existing sidewalks are much easier to do, they're already there. It's a matter of pulling one off and putting one on, right at, generally at the property line. For these new sidewalks are much more difficult because our right-of-way has not had sidewalks for 95, almost 100 years. In addition to that, impact fee money cannot be used for repair, but it can be used for new augmented mobility through sidewalks.
We have plenty of need there, that's for sure.
Thank you. And so sidewalk extension and crosswalks will be funded out of general capital. We used all of the mobility money in the new sidewalks. Citywide street resurfacing. So this is a program that could always use more funding as well. So the request was for $1 million. We are only proposing funding $500,000 just so that we can spread the available dollars further. And so as money comes in, this would be one of the areas that I may identify providing additional funding towards. You can see here that currently they have about about $1.1 million available. That was about back in April. I'm sure they've spent some of that since. Channel markers and upgrades I did not fund. They do have about $100,000. They only replace these when several of them get wiped out, and so currently they have sufficient funding if they needed to replace several of them. Many times they happen because of a storm, and then hopefully FEMA reimburses us for the replacement. Citywide traffic calming program. So currently there is about $3 million, just under $3 million available in the fund. This is as of April. I know they are spending a lot of that money as we speak. So even though Hermes didn't give me the eye, he has a significant amount of money available, but he also has a significant amount of requests that come in. Usually the available money is because the process takes time. So the money sits there for a little while and then they spend a lot of it at the same time. So they're requesting $500,000. We are proposing funding just $1 million, $500,000, just so that we can spread the funding across other projects. Again, this is an area where we could probably put more funding, but other projects need it as well. Going down to the Giralda Avenue tree grate installation, so a $120,000 request. This is a project that I did not fund. I'm sure that the replacement or installation of tree grates is important here. This might be a qualifier to take the $100,000 from the museum if we transfer it and put it into the Giralda tree grate installations. That could be something that we could consider. Residential waste pit restoration. So last year, we've gone back and forth on how to address the waste pits that are created as part of trash pickup. At one point, we included them in the capital budget and we were using a contractor. Last year, we moved that work into solid waste operating budget. And so instead of funding in the capital, the funds, we funded it in their operating budget. It's done with solid waste employees and the material is budgeted there. So we no longer are funding it in the capital, but until the money is gone, they still have some money that they can use for material or for a contractor if needed. Until that money is gone, you'll continue seeing it on the list. Street tree succession plan, the request was for $250,000, but Dina has done such a great job at collecting tree mitigation revenue. So when a development or a project is not able to install a tree, they pay into a tree mitigation fund, and those funds build up. And so currently, Dina has a good amount of funding for replacement of trees, and therefore she was okay with me not funding the $250,000 in the tree succession plan. Otherwise, it would come from general capital as well.
So, yeah, well, I'll sit down with Dina and figure out which projects have to be cut, that are near and dear to some people's hearts. And we have trees for Biltmore Way, we have trees for in front of City Hall, we have and those have been waiting for decades, so.
So some of those projects are funded independently, like Biltmore Way. You'll see that on the next part of the list. But yes, those are considerations that Dina has to make in managing the funds that she has available. So you'll see here that the request of $9.1 million in the recurring section, 9.173, almost $9.2 million, we are funding $6.4 million, and we have an unfunded need of $2.7 million, right? So our dollars start to not get to every project. Going down, this is the largest section. These are one-time and multi-year projects. This is where you're going to see a lot of our park requests, right? So Parks gets a lot of requests for the renovation of parks. Some other one-time requests that we have for restorations of facilities, et cetera, are going to be in this section. And so consistent with the prior sections, I highlighted anything in yellow just so it's kind of easier to follow what we did not fund, but you'll notice that there's not a lot of yellow. We did a really good job of funding with one-time money many of these projects. The section above, this $9 million, is usually where we would have been able to use the additional recurring funding that we lost, and we won't talk about that because I think we spent a lot of time on that in the beginning of the meeting. But typically that $9 million, we would have been able to fund more of it with recurring dollars that we've lost over the last couple of years. Excuse me. One-time multi-year projects. So I'm just going to go through the list of projects that had funding requests. Citywide facility impact glass installation. This would be the installation of impact windows on the La Park side of the country club. There are some windows that are currently being replaced. This would continue and finish that side of the country club. This does propose using the very expensive windows that would mimic the historic windows that are there, or whether they're historic or not, the existing windows. So $482,000 being proposed to be funded in the country club, which, as I mentioned before, is funded out of general capital funds. We just transfer it to the country club fund. Going back down the list, we have the metal canopy structure for the fuel station at Public Works. And so a request that they've had for several years, a request that we have not funded for several years, and once again, we are not proposing funding at this time. However, to Public Works, who does all of the work, we did fund the painting of their facility, which is the next project down. Last year, one of the buildings was funded to be painted. They're requesting to continue painting the building. This is an important, this is just like waterproofing, right? So this maintains the outside envelope of the building, and even though this is a newer building than some of our historic buildings, not so new anymore, the painting is important to keep that outside sealed and make sure that we don't have future leaks. Manager.
So the mayor, painting is a very important issue in maintenance of the building and protecting concrete and for longevity.
Right.
It's not really understood, but it is a very important aspect of
yes,
building maintenance.
I know it goes far beyond beauty. So, thank you.
So our recommendation is to fund the $500,000 towards painting of their facility.
Through the chair, how often is it recommended to paint the exterior envelope of a building?
Commissioner, it depends on the condition of the paint. Most paints are 5 to 10 years somewhere. We try to use the highest quality paint because the labor is quite large. So probably 7 to 10 year range. But as you can look at the deterioration of the paint and plan accordingly.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Sometimes it has to deal with the sun exposure, things of that nature.
Public Works Maintenance Facility Warehouse 1. So although this is at the Public Works facility, this is actually the warehouse that is used to store fire equipment. And so fire is requesting the installation of concrete or the repair of concrete at that facility and some ventilation issues. And so we're recommending funding the $220,000 needed for that project. Going down the list to the Coral Gables Museum repairs, so this is $200,000 that was requested towards the, some repairs and some improvements in the courtyard of the museum. And so the request is for $200,000. Currently, we are not recommending funding the $200,000. You will note that last year, we funded $500,000 from the TDR money for the museum, and that was intended for a match, a grant match that they were applying for, a grant that they were applying for. I don't know the status of the grant. We have not given them the $500,000 for that match. And I believe that in the resolution, the discussion was that for the grant match or for future maintenance of this long list of items that are needed at the museum. So at this point, we're not recommending funding the $200,000 to go towards the courtyard improvements.
Through the chair.
Yeah, go ahead, I had a
Okay,
question.
so I think you just answered my question. It's courtyard improvements, because what I was hearing last time, that it was landscaping in the courtyard.
Yes, so there are some pavers and some landscaping, right, Dina, at that courtyard.
So,
Tree grates, right.
tree grates. If
So
you- if
even
you-
though it has to do with landscaping, it's actually improvements of the pavers and the tree grates in the courtyard due to the landscaping that is there.
But that's inside the museum. Is that responsibility of the city? Because
So-
this is like,
Commissioner,
yes.
I'm gonna suggest you go walk there. If you go and look where they have AstroTurf right now in the outside courtyard area, and this is our building, by the way, that's a trip hazard there, just like sidewalks. Someone can get injured. It is our property. We need to take care of it. It's been in disrepair for a long, long time, and I think for the safety of the patrons that go there, we do need to take care of that.
Through the chair, agreed, but is that our responsibility? I asked the city manager to go ahead and review the lease.
We are reviewing the lease for that, yes, but it is in bad condition, let's say. But
No, I completely agree. Yes, but is that, I know, because it's inside the building, right?
courtyard, it's an interior courtyard.
It's an interior courtyard.
But
No, it's not inside a roofed section of the building. It's an open-air courtyard. So it's not inside the building.
it's an open-air courtyard, correct.
Yes.
Within the perimeter of the building, but it's not in good condition. And I think we need to make sure they've had various lawsuits already on trip and fall. So I think we need to look at this.
It's not being funded anyway, right?
I mean, currently, we have not recommended funding the additional $200,000. There is a $500,000 that was committed to the museum, and the discussion was that if they did not pursue or receive that grant, that the commission would then consider how else that those funds could be used towards the maintenance of the facility, since they are TDR funds, which are required to be used towards the maintenance of historic facilities. And so I think probably there's a discussion to be had about the status of the grant, the work that's needed at the country club, and where the responsibility falls. And so at this time, we're not recommending putting in the additional $200,000. As with this plan, until September 25th, the funding is not final. So if the discussions that happen and the decisions that are made require us to put the additional funding, we can then evaluate it later.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Installation of a closed-circuit television security system. So CCTV in parking facilities, you're going to see another project for roadways. These are the cameras, the security cameras, and they also provide other information to the parking system within our parking facilities, and so they need to be renewed, new ones installed, and so funding $420,000 towards that. That'll come from the parking fund, so $420,000 from the parking fund to fund those CCTVs. Going down the list, again, only highlighting items that have requested funding. So if there's a project that's here that didn't have requested funding and you'd like to discuss, please mention it, but I'm only going to highlight those that have requested funding for now. Hammock Oaks Park is a small park by Fairchild Garden, correct? And so this is just a small project to do some landscaping at this project, so $149,000 requested, and so we're proposing funding that $149,000. William and Leona Cooper and Nellie B. Moore Park enhancements, and so this is a project that we started funding in previous years. We've broken up the work at this project, the enhancements at this project into two separate areas, addressing one area of the park first, and so the $966,000 requested here would finish that second portion of the project, and so we are proposing funding that $946,000 from the general capital improvement funds, and then we have $19,802 available from impact fees for park enhancements. So the other 35%, right? So we have park impact fees. 65% goes to purchase of land, 35% goes to park enhancements. Some of the park enhancements money that we had available, we recently pulled into the Phillips Park project, and so that left us with an available balance of $19,800, which we are going to put into this project to fully fund the $966,000 requested for that second phase of the park. Okay, I'm going to scroll up a little bit, so give me a second. I'm going to scroll past this project, and I'm going to go to Salcedo Dog Park Development. So this is the vacant land just northwest of the Public Safety Building on Salcedo. There's been discussions of how to develop this land to potentially put a dog park in. The request to do that would be just under $1.4 million. At this moment, we are not recommending funding that because of the availability of funds, and you'll see the next project, which will absorb the availability of that same level of funding. Moving down the list, we have San Sebastian Park enhancements. The $106,000 that are requested are for the design of the park, which would then lead to about a $500,000 construction project in the future. In our discussions, and now we're going to get into some of the parks, in our discussions, we should prioritize finishing the parks that we've started and maybe funding smaller park renovations or enhancements that we have before we take on the enhancements of additional parks for now. And so we are not proposing funding the design for this park at this time. We would push this to a future year and evaluate the timing of when to design that park.
So I do have a question for you. The $50,000 that's being sitting here for Coral Gables High School, which, you know, we don't have any movement on that at all. Do you have a recommendation at this time as to which park it should go to?
So we're talking about the $50,000 that was moved out of the youth center. So we had set aside money in the youth center project for the development of renderings of a future youth center project. Last year, we moved $50,000 out of that project into a project for Coral Gables Senior High Park, and those funds are available there. I think that was also for design of a potential park in that area. If we were to take the current funding out of that park and put it anywhere, I would recommend either, don't get mad at me, Phillips Park, which could probably use a little contingency, or also Blue Road Park is going to be on this list that has a water overlook, which is in the second phase, which would probably also be able to use some funding. I don't know if Public Works, anywhere you need $50,000 today?
Well, we can bring this.
Yes. I never give them money, so they're excited.
So I'm going to ask you,
We can
through the
come up with a
manager's office,
recommendation, yes.
because I know we need to do a resolution to direct it. So instead of just letting the money sit, let's get it actively used.
Okay,
And if the school board is ever ready, willing, and able to do something, which I find the school board very difficult, to get something with meat on the table, we can revisit it at that time.
okay.
So the
Because
mayor, yes, I would like to reassign that money. That money needs to be reassigned, and we're planning on doing it.
Right.
But we need a resolution to do so.
Yeah, so we'll do it for the July 1st
Yes.
meeting, okay?
Yes, we could do that.
quickly through the mayor, or through the chair. So we're talking about 50,000, is this the $50,000 that had been allocated for Coral Gables Senior High School's park that was for architectural designs? And I thought did we not already sign a contract with Dover Cole for those drawings?
It was not signed.
Okay.
We may have negotiated a contract that we have not bound ourselves to yet.
Right. Was it approved but not signed? You know, like, was that money allocated for the architectural rendering?
So the funding was allocated for a potential rendering. The status of the contract, I don't know if it
So-
came to commission for approval.
So I think staff can probably fill in more of the details, but I know there was a contract that I saw that had been negotiated by staff. I think there were some questions. The contract provided to give the consultant, site access to the school and things like that, right? Fred, is that accurate? And so there was questions as to whether the school board was involved in that, and I don't know that we got a
Well, yeah, we had been working, because there was through that resolution that came here, through some of the Coral Gables parents had come in, and so we had worked with a firm that had already been looked at for this type of work. We had been in discussions, we had gotten a proposal, it has not been approved. It had been previously discussed that it was going to be administratively approved because it would meet under the threshold of expenditures, but what we were waiting on now was we were still looking at to make sure that the school board had been okay with the process and to move forward. So that's why we haven't moved forward. But that's where we are in the process.
So, I'll dovetail into that. I mean, I did a presentation, folks came in from FIT to do something at the Coral Gables Elementary School. The desire of that grant program was to have public access to the fields, and the school board said absolutely not. So that's the hurdle we have to deal with any type of, beautification or plans that we want to do for any school board property. They have to be on board first. So, we can readdress this at a point if the school board wants to change direction on this type of stuff, but I've hit a stone wall that, there's not even cracks in it to be able to move that forward. So rather than let the money sit, I'm sure we can find an appropriate place to apply it in the meantime.
And through the chair, I was under the impression that the school board member or the school board chair had said that she was willing to support the project. And it would have required, as the school board member for that school, to have her support to move forward. But I don't know, maybe the manager's office can reach out to the school board and see if there is an appetite to move forward. I know Friends of Gables High had been working on this and trying to get the school board on board. They had meetings, but maybe your office can reach out and get something concrete so that we have the information moving forward. But I personally have not spoken to the school board members. I wouldn't be able to say one way or another.
Through the chair, my discussions with them was the enhancement of that field facility. The problem that I had with it is the school board property. Are we going to invest millions of dollars in school board property or on our property? And then we have no control over that property. So we could have access today and lose access tomorrow. So if we were to make those kind of investments, it would have to be some type of contractual agreement that we would have access to that for multiple years, I would say decades, in order for us to invest in a facility there at the expense of our own parks, of our own youth center. And that's the problem that I see there. It's really not our land. We don't even control what's built there. They have their own building department. So are we going to make those kind of expenditures there without really some long-term commitment from the school board? We could not get that. We could not get that long-term commitment.
So that's the same stone wall that I hit, when we had grant monies available to put in children's size facilities over at Coral Gables Elementary. The conditions of that grant required public access. So, they turned away a lot of free money, a lot more than $50,000, because it didn't want to give public access. And I understand there's security concerns. And, you know, you might have to put in additional fencing and things of that nature. So I think this is something that we're going to have to really, you know, work on over a long period of time to develop a plan that can still secure the school and that they will allow public access on there. And then you have liability concerns if somebody trips and falls and all those things that go into any time you allow the public to have access to a facility. Plus we have, you know, we have this project on that manager is going to be following up on with University of Miami for the Lee Lincoln piece of property. So, you know, we have opportunities to have more public land available in the future if we work together, and we can focus maybe the investment dollars there.
Through the chair, the meeting, the school board did have a meeting, and the resolution of that meeting was that they were going to move forward, working out any hiccups, but the plan is to move forward with this.
So through the chair, so I have been approached by residents who are very passionate about seeing this project move forward with one of the big hurdles being the $50,000 not getting to the architect. Because the belief there is like if the renderings are actually produced, then there's a concerted effort that can be mounted to try and reach some private money as well as, you know, secure public money to try and make a vision come to light, right? Where there would be residents that could be using the access to the field, increased property values. But I'm not familiar with the as you said, Vice Mayor, substantial hurdle to the conditions over this public land, whether we would have access to it or not, whether the public could have access to it or not, the liability issues, or even something as basic as whether there's support from the school board itself, right? So I don't know. It sounds like there are a lot of questions and maybe some inconsistencies that I'm hearing, you know? We have Commissioner Castro saying that she understands that there's support for it. Possibly Commissioner Fernandez has said he's heard the same thing. You said that with respect to the elementary school that there was definitely major hurdles that you experienced when you negotiated directly with them. I feel perhaps it's best to not write off the $50,000 from this project just yet until we get some answers to these questions.
So the answer to the question is, I'm sure they'd love the money. The problem is they have to be willing to sign the dotted line that the public, our residents, will have access to that field. That is the reason why the public wants it. I'm sure they'll love to take the money, and they'll be able to utilize the money. There's always a need for the money on a school piece of property. You know, and I know the Friends of Gables High invested a lot, but there has been absolutely no interest on the school board to ever allow public access to this property during the hours that there are not school activities going on. The gates will be locked. The gates are locked now. The gates will always be locked, and there won't be public access until they change their policy.
If that's the case, then I would not, consistent I think with what's been expressed by the city manager, see the wisdom in putting in money on land that we do not own, nor we would have meaningful access for our residents to that land, right? But I mean, if that's definitive and that's how you understand the current state of affairs, is that the school board is not seeing the way supportive of having our residents have access to the land, that's how you see it today. That's how.
There's no fence to protect the school. So any plan, you know, if I was sitting as a school board member, I need to protect the security of the school. Then we have all the other hurdles where we have to just dice up who's responsible if someone's injured. You know, the access, you know, there's a ton of security issues that they would have to be concerned for, from someone being able to infiltrate the school from the field side as opposed to the perimeter side that they currently have. And unless and until they're willing to address those issues, you can give them money, but we do have other priorities. We have other areas that we can make available for the public to use as field space, and you know, including Phillips Park, okay, to be able to get that project closer to a finish line.
So, Chair, what I can do is contact the school board again that was a year and a half ago or almost 2 years ago, can contact them again and give the commission an update. Since this has to go to resolution to move the money, I can provide an update prior to bring that resolution up.
Well, through the chair, right, that makes all kinds of sense to me. And, Mr. Manager, in any way that I can assist you with with that reach out to the school board, I'll be willing to do so.
Perfect. Absolutely. Hopefully they change their mind, because I have this other program that was wanting to give the money, do the fields, pay for the entirety of it. Okay? But because they wouldn't allow public access, it didn't move forward.
So just for the viewer, because I know that you all are aware, so for that $50,000 is currently in that project, allocated to that project. I am not putting any additional or taking away that funding in this process to determine funding for fiscal '26. That's a decision that the commission can make throughout the fiscal year or after, whether to leave that money there or to move it to somewhere else. And so in this process, I'm not touching those funds at the moment. So I'm going to go back up to the top. We were at the Salvador Park. We went to San Sebastian Park, the design that we are not funding. This will have to be considered in a future year with a potential construction project of about $500,000 at that park. The next project that is requesting funding is the $1.3 million for pickleball. This would be the funding necessary to make the pickleball courts at Salvador Park at the Biltmore permanent. And so this is $1.3 million for the permanent courts at that site. And so we are recommending funding it based on the input from the commission that we've received over the last few months. Coral Bay Park renovation and enhancement, another park that the community would love to see a significant enhancement at. At this moment, we are not recommending funding the design of that park, which would then have about a $3 million future project need. And so we would have to consider that for a later time at this point. North Entrance Park development, so this is the property that is across from the Publix on 37th Avenue and Flagler off of Ponce. And so we have that vacant land that would be perfect for an entranceway. And so this would be about $100,000 for design and with a future project of potentially about $1 million to do something nice at that entranceway. Rotary Park enhancement. So currently here you see that there is funding. That funding is for design and some beginning of construction. That park still needs to go through community input, and the department feels that they have sufficient funding to make it through that process. And so we are proposing not funding the 1.5 in construction this year and considering it for a future year, potentially for '27. James and Sally Jude Park renovation and enhancement, similar to the other park requests that we have. The community would like to see an enhancement at that park. The design would be about $280,000 with a future project cost of at least $4 million. And so again, we are proposing that we revisit that for a future year. Salvador Park improvements, and so we had much discussion about this park yesterday. This $130,000 is not for a full renovation of the park. That has been done recently. This $130,000 is $30,000 towards the refreshing of the dog area, the dog park area, and $100,000 to go towards the tennis facility improvements to begin looking at the improvements needed at that tennis facility with future needs of $500,000 and upwards, depending on what comes out of that. So we are recommending funding that at this time. And I have it yellow because yesterday I didn't have money for it, but today I do. Okay, so it's no longer yellow. Youth center improvements, so this $225,000 is not for the larger renovation of the youth center because we know that that's going to be a significant project. This $225,000 is for the replacement of the AP system, which is a life safety item at the youth center at this point. It's for the safety of those who attend the youth center. Blue Road open, and we are recommending funding that. Blue Road open space improvements, and so the Blue Road open space park has been in renovation. Hopefully it will be done soon. The first phase of it. A second phase of it includes a water feature and outlook of the water there, and then the 279,000 requested and recommended is to continue with that second phase of the park. I'm going to scroll up a little bit. So installation of CCTVs on the roadway. So here's that second project I mentioned. So 250,000 towards the continued installation and replacement of cameras in the roadways, and so we recommend funding that. Fire Station 3 Telecom Tower reinforcement and enhancement. So this is a very important tower that we have at Fire Station 3. It allows us to have the connectivity we need for public safety radios and other methods of communication. This is actually offset by a share that will be paid from the communication companies, so the Verizons and the other telecom companies that also attach to that tower. So $700,000, but it's offset by about $400,000 that we expect from their contribution.
Through the chair, this tower has been reinforced as much as possible. It's the only height that we have going south, and it's very important for communications, not only cellular communication, but also police and fire. So this is a new tower, so it's not an enhancement to the tower. It's a new tower designed for much higher structural loading.
Right, that's a critical need, yeah.
So we recommend funding the difference of $300,000. The other $400,000 or so is coming from revenue that we'll receive from the communications companies. On your list, the next item, you only see MDC impact fees. In our effort to try and print it larger, we hid the words. Coral Way at Columbus Boulevard improvements. And so this is being funded from Miami-Dade impact fees. And so the $250,000 that is being requested, you will see it further down the line, coming from Miami-Dade impact fees that we submitted an application to and they approved a couple of years ago. A couple of rows down is also the Granada pedestrian infrastructure improvements, also being funded by Miami-Dade impact fees. They are not only providing us the $250 that is listed here for fiscal year 26, but they will also be funding the respective $1.1 million and $1.7 million in the future years for those projects.
So I am somewhat embarrassed because I live at that corner of Coral Way in Granada,
Yes.
and I've had many residents ask me, what's going on in that corner? Can you give me a very high level, very quickly, what's happening? Because it
I
looks
will
like
defer to Public Works because my response will be it's under construction.
right in front of my house, you know?
Good morning, I'm Macias, Public Works Director. So the project at the intersection includes a couple of things. One thing is the hardening of the strings for the street signals, because the ones that are there right now, they're not rated to the current standards for windstorms. And in addition to that, it's an overall intersection improvements. It's going to include some pedestals to facilitate crossing. So it's an overall intersection improvement. It's going to facilitate people going across Coral Way, which right now it's a problem. There's also going to be the ped poles for signals at the corners. So it's a complete intersection improvement.
It looked like, I'm sorry.
No, please.
No, it looked like there was also like something that looks like piping or sewage, something.
Drainage.
Storm, where we have to do some drainage improvements as part of that intersection improvement.
That's Columbus. We have the same thing going on at Granada.
In Granada, what we've discussed with the county, it's a traffic circle.
Okay, because everything's torn up right now at the corner of Granada, and they're putting in piping, they're putting in drainage, and I see a big pedestal going in for...
Right, that's the drill shaft for the pole that holds the strings.
It holds the strings.
Right,
But
for the
But
hanging.
that's not a circle going in there.
No,
There's
no,
not
no,
enough
no,
space for a circle.
No, we're maintaining it's going to look very similar to what you have right now as far as the signals are. It's going to be signals on a string. However, they're going to be windstormed. They're going to be more resilient to
It's
storm.
not going to have the metal arm out?
No,
No, Vice Mayor, because of the historical aspect of, the intersection, we did not want to go with those ugly arms. So we are keeping the cable, we're keeping the cable-mounted signalization, but it's strengthened so to provide more to provide proper hurricane resistance. So, we were able to do that because of the historical aspects of the intersection. And so in addition to that, the fountains have been turned off because of construction, not because they're not working, so anyone who wants to know. So we've looked at the historical aspects there, and we were able to work that out.
Yeah, you didn't want the dirt being brought into the pumping systems.
Those kind of signalization would be improper, really, in an intersection like that. They don't like to do that, but realizing the historical significance, we went with the cable-mounted lights.
So I see you smiling, because you know what I'm going to ask. Because the residents there have been calling me, wanting to know, when's it going to be done? When's it going to be done? When's it going to be done?
Okay, so Melissa Desai is Assistant Public Works Director for Transportation. Just some clarification. Columbus Boulevard is the one that he was talking about with the roundabout. The one that we're working on right now is Granada. We're installing what was there before were concrete strain poles. We're replacing them with steel strain poles to bring them up to standard. We installed drainage structures, the storm, as he mentioned, and the contract duration was 8 months. So we're anticipating that it'll be finished in the fall, and it's on schedule right now.
Okay, so...
The rain will impact that schedule?
No, I know rain always impacts schedule. Please note that the grass needs to be restored for the folks that are impacted.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there are sprinkler systems, it's a mess, it's hard for them to get in and out of their driveway with all the equipment there. They've noted the impact on the Fink Park area as well.
All of that's going to be restored at the end of construction.
So, no, it saved me a phone call and an email, so I hit you right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Public Works.
Through the chair, I'm sorry. I want to go back to one item because I got a message from a resident regarding the Merrick House, and I know that's number 35, and it seems like it's funded, right? You know that.
I was going to go back to that later. I was
Yeah.
letting her finish. Let's go item by item.
Because we had passed.
So I
it
think
already.
that's further down the
It's rather,
list.
It's 35.
Well,
we
they're not
passed
in
it already.
order, they're in page number order, so yes, okay, here we go. Merrick House repair improvements. So what is funded at the Merrick House is some repairs to the chimney, right? So they had some damage to the chimney. My understanding is they're still working out the details of the work that needs to be done. And so what is funded there is the repairs of the roof and the chimney that were discussed either earlier this fiscal year or last.
The chimney is limestone, it's very porous, and is very difficult to stop the infiltration for that, and with the historical aspects of that. So we are working on sealing the actual limestone chimney, so that the roofing was done, but that chimney still leaks because of the limestone. That's a problem that we have with limestone buildings.
Do we have a timeline? Do you know if we have a timeline to when this is going to happen, or where are we in that stage?
I can get back with you. I can look at our CIP schedule and get back with you on that.
Thank you.
go ahead.
So I believe I stopped somewhere around just after the pickleball. So we talked about pickleball. We talked about, thank you. Oh, thank you. I was well down. Okay. So the next project requesting for funding, we talked about the Coral Way at Columbus Boulevard improvements. Those are Miami-Dade impact fees. So is the 2 down Granada pedestrian infrastructure improvements. So we talked about those already. Going back up to installation of bike infrastructure. And so installation of bike infrastructure, $250,000. And this would go towards the project that's contemplated at South Alhambra, or for the bike infrastructures. We're recommending funding that at this time. Biltmore streetscape improvements, I'm going to scroll up a little bit. So Biltmore streetscape improvements, I think you're all familiar with the improvements that we're doing with
I am going to
landscaping and
pause you on
sidewalks. Yes.
South Alhambra, so there's no confusion. with folks. Are you talking about the section south of Bird?
South of US 1.
Oh, that's the one south of the US one.
Yes.
Okay.
Biltmore Way streetscape improvements. Sorry, start getting a little tongue-tied. We're almost at the bottom of the list. Okay. So this is $1,030,000 to go towards the installation of landscaping, some changes to the sidewalks in that area. And so we are currently recommending funding that project. I think you are all very familiar with it. DeSoto Fountain Traffic Circle. So this is a request of $805,000 for this. This has a FDOT grant in expected in fiscal year 27. And so in speaking with the department, we recommended funding $350,000 of the 850 asked, which would get them the remainder of what they need for the design. We would then need to fund the other $500,000 for the remaining grant match for this project, because we have a match for this grant. And then we anticipate receiving $1 million. We've been committed to receive a $1 million grant from the Department of Transportation for this project. Any questions about the DeSoto Fountain?
This is just general maintenance, no?
This is a redoing the DeSoto Fountain Circle, right?
It's a safety issue. You know, it's a dicey circle to go through.
Frogger.
The Total Fountain Commission has quite a bit of asphalt, and there's a number of improvements that we're doing.
So we have several concepts that were developed over the years, years ago. And some of them look into closing some roadways to limit the amount of streets that are going into the circle. We're looking to tighten the circle because there's a lot of excess pavement there. Adding landscaping, pedestrian crosswalks, high emphasis crosswalks, so that we can have pedestrian connectivity. And it's part of like phase one, because one of the other things that we're looking into is getting a grant with DOT to get sidewalks south of there to Bird.
Okay, so that's a pretty big project.
It's a big project.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want to stay available. I don't know all the details of these projects. I know how to fund them. Ponce de Leon Boulevard Streetscape Improvement Phase 3, and so this is a project that is already underway. We now have contracts, and so the current funding of about $3 million is sufficient for the project, but does not leave any contingency. So the department has asked for a reasonable amount of contingency for the project of $300,000, and we recommend funding the contingency for that project. If they don't need it, it will fall back into the fund, and we will reassign it to a project when the project is done. But for now, we recommend funding contingency for the project. Ponce de Leon, improvements H Street to Flagler, and so the Phase 3 improvements only take us, I believe, to H Street, and so this would be continuing a project to Flagler of Ponce de Leon. Currently, there is some funding in this project, and then there's funding further down for landscaping, which would do landscaping improvements in that area. This would be to begin designing and consider funding in the future some construction to consider to do improvements up Ponce de Leon through Flagler. And so we're recommending the $225,000 to do that. Ponce de Leon Park improvements. So this is the small park where there's a little fountain, I think, and a bench on Ponce de Leon by the motel, the hotel that's there. And so $42,000 to design a project, estimating just under $225,000 for a future construction and improvement in that little park. Probably appropriate because we're doing the rest of the improvements along Ponce de Leon in that area. Citywide landscaping and irrigation, and so the majority of these funds goes towards the landscaping on the north side of Ponce de Leon, and then some additional funding for irrigation needed throughout the city for other projects. So again, when Dina plants plants that need water, she needs irrigation for those plants. So just under $1.2 million, we're recommending funding that since I didn't give her any money for trees. So $1.2 million for those irrigation improvement, or the landscaping and irrigation improvements. Coco Plum street lighting, so we're almost done, second to last. Coco Plum street lighting, so a couple of years ago, we worked with Coco Plum 1 to share the cost of removing the street lights in that neighborhood. That then saves us costs with FPL. We are no longer then responsible for those lights that get installed. And so we have a similar conversation with Coco Plum 2. They've been having the discussions at their HOA level, and so we are planning the $270,000 needed to commit to that same agreement with them. We recommend funding it because in the long run, that will result in cost savings and logistical savings to the city.
Through the chair?
Yes.
The new FPNL tariffs make sense. We remove the poles. FPNL provides the actual pole. All we have to, our cost would be energy, and they maintain the poles. It's not only maintenance, but also at the storm surge area, those poles could get wiped out. It costs them millions of dollars. It's on FPNL at that time. We're not in the pole business, so I think these new tariffs, we're trying to take advantage of them as much as possible because it reduces costs overall and reduces liability.
Definitely.
So the last project on the list is the FPL Streetlight Replacement Program, and so this $2.1 million would be the cost if we were to take on the replacement of the streetlights along the Greenway, so the debate of the silver and the black lights. And so at this time, and partially for reasons that the manager just mentioned, the liability that we take on with taking on the replacement of those lights, we are not recommending funding that $2.1 million.
Through the chair?
Yes.
If we do those lights ourselves, then we are liable for anything that happens to those lights, in addition to the energy requirements and any other liability where there could be a metal pole and somebody touches them and so forth. So this would be our lighting system. Hurricane comes in, wipes it out, we would have to replace it. So we have complete liability on these poles, and we would not be taking advantage of the new tariffs that FPNL can provide us right now. We're trying to use those tariffs as much as possible because they lower costs and lower liability, and also the maintenance belongs to FPNL. So I think it's from a cost perspective and liability perspective, it's a good deal for the city.
Right. Some members of the Landmark Board feel that they've worked out an arrangement with FPNL that would allow the tariffs somehow to be, or they're going to add these poles, the silver poles, to the inventory. So perhaps a follow-up discussion with FPNL would be warranted.
We already had that discussion, and we'll be bringing that up to the commission.
Thank you.
And so to begin the conclusion of our discussion, this section had requests of just under $16.4 million, and we are funding just under $8.5 million from the general capital improvements, $500,000 that will come from Miami-Dade impact fees, another just under $20,000 from parks enhancement impact fees, $482,750 towards the country club, which will also come from general capital impact funds, and $420,000 from the parking fund to fund a total of $9.9 million, leaving an unfunded amount of $6.5 million. This section traditionally is a section that gets the least funding because we have more wants and needs than we can fund in any given year, and so we do our best to try and fund as much as possible. Going along that lines, the total request for fiscal year 26 was $77.8 million. And so through the thoughtful planning over the years of how we fund capital and all of the work of our departments and my staff and the guidance of the city manager's office, we are able to fund almost $54 million of those requests, which is consistent with prior years. with the prior years, even though we had less recurring revenue coming in. Again, I have to state that a lot of these funds are coming from one-time money. So when that one-time money reduces or ceases to exist for any reason, we won't be able to fund many of these projects, but we went through a rigorous exercise over the last 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of the manager being back, or 3 weeks now, to be able to try and fund as much as the community's requests and priorities, and to give the departments the funding that they need to maintain what we have. All of this is based on maintaining the millage. So any changes to the millage will change the number that is reflected here. And so I will continue to encourage you to maintain the millage. I'm happy to bring in millage increase if you'd like. So
Speaking of which,
slide that in for you.
how's your calculation going on the decreases?
On the decreases. And so that will be my next exercise. That will be my next exercise. We talked about bringing you something by August 1st. I can give you very high level that a 1% decrease is almost $1.4 million, 1.367. A 2% decrease to the millage would be an impact of almost $2.8 million, 2.735. A 3% would be $4.1 million reduction. A 4% would be almost $5.5 million, $5,471,000. And a 5% increase would be a 6.838 or 39 reduction to our revenue. And so you can see here that if we could fund more, we would, because we believe that the community desires the level of service, and even a greater level of service than we provide now. You get the emails and the comments of the things that the community would like to see. And I believe that with the direction of the manager and this commission, we do an amazing job of servicing the community and giving them all of the things that they ask for as much as we can. I know that the departments do an amazing due diligence in managing the funds that they have. Any fund balance that we get in any year is because the departments are very conservative in their spending. So thank you for your guidance. The next step is going to be on July 2nd. We're going to come back to you for our budget meeting, now on July 2nd, to set the tentative millage, which we will be bringing to you at the same rate as it currently is. You will set the millage. Whatever millage is set on that meeting is very difficult to increase, but it can always be decreased. We will not encourage you to decrease it. And so once we set the millage, that'll go out on the trim roll. That's what will be advertised. We'll come back to you on September 11th and September 25th for the first and second budget hearings to adopt the budget. And at that point, on July 2nd, we will present to you the increases that we are absorbing in the operating budgets, and then the final capital plan that will go into the July 1 budget, which will be revised over the summer with any additional information we have, and bring it back to you in September.
Through the chair, I want to reiterate what the city manager was saying, that if we even think of lowering the millage rate, really we will be affecting, or we would have to be lowering our standards or services. And you did mention something else, I didn't catch it. If it wasn't reducing services or cutting services, what was the other option?
Well, we've got capital improvements, but a lowering of the millage is a reoccurring cost.
Exactly.
So we are dealing with a reduction every year. So one-time costs can be handled much better than certainly a reoccurring cost. So we would have to reduce projects or cut that money from the budget wherever the commission feels it's the most appropriate.
So we cannot cut capital projects, because in order to lower the millage rate, it has to be a reoccurring expense, because lowering the millage rate, it's a continuous effort. I think the only other option, if we weren't going to cut services, would be to increase the garbage. And I don't think we're in that situation right now. We lowered it, and I think really residents are so happy. Yes, we're eating a lot of it. We are. But I think it was a hard decision to make, to either lower the millage or benefit everyone with that reduction in garbage.
Commissioner, lowering the waste fee was $3.6 million hit on the general fund. That's a reoccurring cost. So it's a
Exactly.
reduction of $3.6 million to the reoccurring portion of the budget. The COLA was another $2 million, so that's $5.6 million. So those things are, we are absorbing those now.
Understood.
Commissioner,
And, yeah,
so part of the reason I made the motion to lower the garbage fee is to help out some of those who are struggling the most. It's a substitute for increasing, for instance, the homestead exemption, which would provide more benefit for residents because it also lowers the school taxes and the county taxes, but we don't have control over homestead exemption. The state of Florida does. In order to be able to manage the budget better, we also have to tighten our belts. There's many different ways we can tighten our belts. Number one is greater efficiencies. Garbage is a ripe area for greater efficiencies. And Commissioner, I'm looking forward to the Sunshine meeting. I'm going to have some separate meetings as well to brainstorm additional ideas so that we can deliver better services for our residents and also save money. But, you know, as I indicated to the unions when I did my interview, I'm willing to pay you fairly. I'm willing to pay you competitively. And I think that's the mantra of which we need to adhere to fairly and competitively. However, when we're just responding to somebody because they either want to support us in our campaigns for re-election, that's where we are doing a disservice to the residents of our city. We need to look at this from a holistic standpoint, not an emotional standpoint, on what is necessary and what is needed. And one of the factors I look at is how many applicants we're receiving, you know, in drilling down as to reasons why people leave, because people leave for many different reasons. They might want to go live closer to other members of their family. They may be tired of the traffic in Miami-Dade County, you know, and they want a shorter commute. You know, some of the folks that we lost for those reasons. And then there's normal attrition that happens in any organization. They might want a change of career. There's many different reasons. So we need to look at it from a holistic standpoint, not only comparative to other municipalities, because the workload and the stress levels are different from one municipality to another municipality. This is a really nice area to work in because the stress levels are less. We don't have the critical issues, for instance, like Miami Beach was having a few years back with spring break. So I hope that we can look at the budget holistically going forward on every aspect of it. I want our employees well paid, fairly paid, and competitively paid, but not to the point where it's hurting us when it comes to budget time. And we have to take some painful cuts on some of the projects that we'd really like to move forward. Okay, thank you. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your dedication. I know this was a lot of work, and some of the exercise I did last year on trying to arrive at a 1% cut, which I didn't quite reach 1%, was to address staffing, where I felt we could have, you know, run a leaner ship and not taken on full-time expenditures where we were functioning in with part-time expenditures in the past. Cost a lot of money. It did. So we'll be back here on July 2nd.
July 2nd.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.